Hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of Best in the West, the League of Legends show where we talk about the LEC and everything around the LEC. And for this episode, I said on Twitter that we're going to do the tier list and episode for this one, but there was a bit of miscommunication, so what we're going to do instead now is we're going to do a retrospective episode. We're going to look at the 8 weeks of competition in the LEC, how the teams performed, which players stood out, stuff like that. I guess we'll also just kind of wing and see what's coming up. And then for Thursday, we're going to publish our tier list episode right before the playoffs, so you are ready and excited and prepped for that whole new saga of double elimination drama in the LEC.
Yeah.
But before
unless people can take my notes.
Exactly. also,
I normally literally do these things like an hour before. Like I'll stream it literally an hour before, and then I can be the only one to have said stuff like that. Neon would end up being the best AD and shit like this, you know.
Yep.
Go on.
Well, he did get some recognition, right? I think he was on the third All-Pro team of the votes, so he popped up there, and rightfully so. I'm very happy to see him there. But before we get all that, Veteran, how are you doing? How is your weekend without LEC? How is life after the chaos that was the LEC regular split?
I mean, Super Week, as entertaining as it was, definitely did not put me in like the best mindset for watching more LEC. I am looking forward to playoffs because at playoffs, no matter what, because of the stakes of it, it will always be entertaining. Definitely there's something to say about the quality of gameplay we saw in the final few weeks.
Yeah.
And very little of it like good.
Yeah, I don't think it was too exciting either. It was obviously the tension was great because it had all shaped up to be this great conclusion where on the final day things would still matter. But the level of gameplay wasn't particularly amazing. And I think in the end, I remember when we did predictions for which team is going to make the playoffs, and we were like, yeah, okay, so Vitality is going to make it in, and it's going to be between Fnatic, Excel, and Astralis. and then Vitality didn't make it in, and instead we have Fnatic and Excel in there, and my tongue-in-cheek prediction, but also some glimmer of hope prediction of Astralis, unfortunately, did not come true. They ended the split with 7-10 score, though, which is pretty decent for them. So it was
Still
I mean, there's two teams that went 3-0 in the final week, which is G2 and Fnatic, the old Kings dynasty stuff, and Fnatic obviously with an amazing, I guess, resurgence, a recovery, or just plot armor to make it through in the end. I don't know what happened there, but they came in and they made it happen for themselves.
I definitely think the first game they played was genuinely impressive to me. The LeBlanc Lucian Nami game that they played, that composition was only going to win with very, very disciplined map play.
Yep.
And obviously on stream, me saying that was basically tantamount to me saying, so I guess it's just kind of lost already. But they actually played it out. Really disciplined and very strong.
Yeah.
The Poppy pick was instrumental there. Razor did that well, but it also meant that they had a lot more leeway than they otherwise would have with this composition. They played out the sides. They always played minimum 2 lanes in mid game, and that was the most control that they played. The other 2 games were complete fiesta shams, and it was like, oh my days! Like it was. I thought maybe off of this, maybe it just gets like maybe they'll just sweep the whole thing really easily. Yeah. But it really went down to the wire. And it definitely felt like there were elements of plot armor there, especially when I saw Misfits draft on the final. Well, not the final game they played against them, the very final game they played against them. I guess Fnatic didn't pay for that game, but the final official game of the last day. Yeah. That draft was like that was the best things Azeri could hope for, right? So they had some elements of plot armor, some elements of luck, and some where they did play some of the best league that they'd played all split.
Yeah,
when it mattered.
Yeah, so just to recap, they first played against Astralis, which was this very early game comp that they snowballed very impressively. Then against Vitality and Misfits, it was much closer. Actually, the game against Misfits, I think the Misfits also kind of threw at some points. But
Yes.
I do think that what surprised me so much is that even after the loss against they lost against G2. Yeah, they lost against G2 in week 7. And because that was a very hard fought game actually and was very close and they came to, I thought they would be very down heading into the week, and I could basically see them collapse already. But they actually managed to pull it off and not let, as Wounded described in an interview I did with him, which we discussed earlier on another episode as well, where he said, when we're down, it lasts much longer than it should be. I fully expected them to be in that state, and for them to then pop off against Astralis, it was completely opposite of my prediction or what I expected. And because I expected them to not enter that game in such a good mood and then that dragging on throughout the weekend and then bombing out, in the end, that boost probably also gave them the confidence to clutch it out against Vitality and Misfits.
That part was my prediction.
Yeah.
Literally just assumed a different result on the very first game.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah. But I mean, overall, if we look at this split of Fnatic, I guess we're getting to that retrospective part right now. It was complete mayhem. It should not have been this close ever for this lineup to get to the playoffs. There has not been any progress in terms of team play, because even in the games that they won against Astralis, Vitality, and Misfits, it was individual performances shining at the right moment. Well, I guess the Astralis game was very well coordinated, but even there you saw, Humanoid suddenly had an amazing game on the LeBlanc, where he had been struggling before. And if we, not going to look too far ahead to playoffs, but if we consider the average of Fnatic overall, I still wouldn't say they've made progress in terms of playing as a team.
Yeah, I mean, when these guys group, they don't seem to know what to do.
Yeah.
So I think that was more the boost in the Astralis game. Like, I remember there was a grouping they did around Drake where Upset gets caught on this Lucian with Flash and everything up and just dies, and they actually lose that team fight. And this is like the first time they group, and there you can see, this composition's not going to do so well, but also none of them seem to really be in it once these group fights start happening. I think Humanoid on LeBlanc, we haven't seen it for a while. It's a much more forgiving champion than a lot of the other champions he's been on. So the fact that the whole team is not necessarily in the zone in these fights, it's easier for him to get out of those bad situations on this champ. Obviously, that's not true of like Silas, right? Which is part of why the Vitality game is such a fiesta. But Perkz decided to either be AFK or just offer himself to Upset on the holy altar for some reason.
That was a rough game from Perkz, yeah.
Yeah, like I'm gonna do my best not to specific target people, but like when it comes to Perkz, he's been around for so long. Like that was a horrible performance. Like that he did in one of the most clutch games. There was a bit there where like Alfari had actually gotten Upset, which he deserved an award for, but Perkz had decided to like move back towards his base or something around Drake Pit at that point.
Yeah.
And and as a result, there was no follow-up possible on it. And then, when they all have to retreat from this because they no longer have their engage tools, that's when Perkz decides now is the time to go in and give Zeri the first kill in the fight.
Yeah.
And it's just, there were so many miscoordinations like that from the Vitality side in that game that it definitely felt like, even though Fnatic have a good scenario here, there was an aspect of luck, right? That even though, we have some bad moments, Vitality are having like a monumental, I think it was like 5% of scenarios collapse that they had.
Yeah, so in I think 5.4% of the scenarios or something, they would not make playoffs. It was unbelievable that they didn't make it. But yeah, to stay with Fnatic for a little bit, because I think what we saw at the start of the split, we were both praising Wunder for his stability on Gragas.
Yeah, I still would.
Yeah, I still think he was a very stable factor. I think in week 6 and 7 he was a bit more rough, but now he showed up again, definitely back to being a stable factor. And I think this is also something that it's very promising to see from him that even though, you know, like this as a team, Fnatic has been very unstable and very disjointed. And, you know, in some regards, probably Wunder you should blame as well for maybe not working together with Razork better or something. You know, it always takes 2 to tango in that regard, and in this case, 5 people actually. But he still has, like, the level of play is still there for him. And I would actually say that you could see this weekend, like in week 8 and throughout the summer split, the only player I think was really absent for me was Hylissang. And from all the other players, we still saw moments where they were at a level that we expected them from on an individual basis. It's just that they never lined up in a way that you could say this is a team playing well together in a consistent manner.
I disagree. I think Hylissang's Lulu play in the Vitality game was really good. Actually, there were a lot of really well-timed polymorphs he got on his opponents that just completely removed them from the game. Obviously, when he's just speeding up upset and throwing shields, that's not impressive. But a lot of the polymorphs he was doing were really well.
He had a flash polymorph, I think, which was really clutch and saved upset, I believe.
Yeah, especially in the final team fights, he was doing really well on that Lulu. Like, I like that. So I'd say he did have good moments in that game.
Right, but if I'm looking at the split, I don't distinctly recall Hylissang.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's one game and it's good. That's fine. It helped them a lot, right? But if I look at split, I would say the other 4 players had more moments where I saw them. Okay, you're at this level that can get Fnatic to like a finals in the LEC. It's just
the split overall, definitely. It made me appreciate Reckless a lot more. And what he enabled about Hylissang, because he made it really easy for Hylissang to just have a numbers advantage wherever he wanted, right? And it seems to me that because of how all-in he plays, if you don't have that numbers advantage by default, which he did, it's very easy for his plays to go bad and to be ones that you don't really want to follow up on. Yeah. When he actually has to lane and then move and the enemy support has any kind of parity on him, it's actually, I don't want to say he's overrated, but I do want to say he definitely loses it. And now that I think support movements aren't just a thing him, Mickey X, and Dreams, who remember that guy, way back in the day, had figured out. Now that everybody has some kind of foundation on this stuff, especially now that you've actually got the good ERL support like Targamas in, he's no longer this like iconic singular superhuman guy who's like all those other map guys, but insanely aggressive. Like, the circumstances that made that work are different, both on his team and on every other team now. I don't think we're going to see a Hylissang split like that again. I think he'll be like Jeonghoon in the sense that if he gets Pike or Bard, which allow you to cheat those kinds of numbers, then he'll be able to do it.
Well, I think something interesting to discuss is actually what's different now for the Fnatic bot lane, because in spring they were praised for being the best bot lane in the LEC, and okay, you might not agree with this, but if we compare it to how they're performing this split, you can definitely see that there's been a drop off, right? So what?
Somewhat.
Yeah, so
kind of.
So what?
Relative.
So obviously in spring we had the Jinx Aphelios meta, and now we're more into a Zeri and Sivir with an Enchanter next to you, sometimes maybe a Nautilus if you want.
Laners.
So do you think that is the main reason for that bot lane to stop working so well together in the summer split?
Yeah, laners. Like there are now laners on bot lane rather than scalers that are going to carry your team fights later on and will play for economy, but will meanwhile either play elsewhere. Last split, they were quite unique in playing heavily around bot lane and playing full lane in bot lane. And they were also doing it at a time where the entire region had reset, so a lot of the bot lanes we're looking at were like brand new, right? So Comp Trimby was new, right?
Yeah.
Xmati Limit was new, Xmati Adote are new, right? Kazi Labrov was one of the exceptions to that, right? They'd also played for a while, and they definitely had a really good playoffs. But like Targamas Flackid, Flackid was so green. He didn't even play right? Targamas, though, like this is the thing, Targamas definitely put like a performance where I basically would put him in. Well, I put him into the S tier before he even played a game. But even if I hadn't done that, I'd immediately move him up there, right? And this was him playing with Flackid, who again is a guy who was so green, a term that I only recently learned and now going to use everywhere. That the fact that he's able to pull that off in the same place as two seasoned players as Upset and Hylissang would say more about Upset Hylissang than it does about Targamas Flackid, right?
Yeah.
You had Patrick switching support halfway through, right? Astralis had Kobe Promiscu, right? You had Unforgiven just coming in on Mad Lions. Everywhere else had reset. They did not have synergy. They were still learning how to play with each other. So many teams had this, but Fnatic's bot lane, they had holdovers from last split, and they had experience, and they were the only ones playing for lane. That's going to generate the impression that they are just so much better. I would say it's true to say that they were ahead, but they were ahead for these reasons. They just had the time in a sense that none of these other
their floor
groups
was
had.
higher than that of the other bot lanes, but the bot lanes...
Their starting point was, they had an extra split over all these bot lanes, right? That's
of course.
the best way to think about it. They had an extra season over all of them. And all the other bot lanes were trying to play meta. At least finally halfway through, they realized that Jinx was broken. And these guys were playing heavy for bot. Like, even if they did play those champs, they played heavy for bot, right? So like I think that's all. Like that's all it was. And after that split, the distance that they had on there with experience just was somewhat meaningless at that point, right?
Yeah.
Most of these bot lanes remained. Except for obviously Kobe Jonghyun, right? They were completely new, but the rest of them stuck the course, right, and stayed the course, I should say, and worked out really well. Actually, also Xmatia Dote did not stay the course. That's why those are the bottom two teams. There you go. Maybe if you stayed the course with self-made Vitality, but that allowed them to catch up. Like at some point, the extra season is somewhat meaningless, right?
Yeah.
And then the meta shifted, allowing all of them to also play lane and have that be viable, right? Enchanters, like you said, were coming in, right? Sivir has come in now, right? We saw Twitch counterpicks into stuff like Ezreal, etc. Aggressive lanes have actually been a thing the whole split. It's no longer Jinx and Scale, right? And that means that now they're not the only team playing for bot lane. They're actually getting contested, and as a result, you see where things actually are, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think the way you
right?
put it also puts in an extra argument, obviously, for give rookies at least a full year, because if you kick them after one split, we don't see them develop to their full extent, and obviously you can't see players reach their full extent even after 1 year, but you can definitely see the growth in their second split. I think for me with Fnatic, I do wonder, pun unintended, what's been going wrong, especially this split between Resorg and Humanoid, because we discussed this moment, I think, in the last episode, where I said Humanoid pushed in his lane, and now, like, he needs to crash his wave, otherwise he's gonna die, but Resorg was nowhere to be found, so, and Resorg is obviously a very crucial component to the lineup, because that's what junglers are in the early game. They are the glue for the team. But I do think, to me, the way I see it, is that Humanoid and Resorg both had good ideas about the game. It's just that they didn't align in many of the cases where you could see
kind of.
so where you could see Resorg thinking about the game. Okay, I need to maybe path top here. Where for Humanoid it would be natural. Okay, and my jungler is gonna be around for this play, so that's why I'm gonna make it. And that being disjointed.
I mean, I feel like old Resorg, old Humanoid do that though. They both thought about the game properly, the same way.
Yeah.
This is definitely something that's happened while they've been on Fnatic, but I'll also say Resorg was much better about that this weekend.
In week 8 he was
way better.
Yeah. He was very solid, absolutely. So it's just the big question, is it gonna stay the same? Because
it's a good sign.
If
And
we look,
also,
if it was cut off at 7 weeks, Fnatic wouldn't have made playoffs. But in week 8, obviously they recovered.
yeah,
So we have
they
7.
always do somehow.
Sorry.
They always do somehow.
Yeah. But we're looking at 7 weeks of inconsistency. In week 8, the game against Astralis, very good coordination into games that they, by sheer motivation, I guess, and willpower, bent in their favor. So it's. I don't have high hopes for Fnatic, if I'm very honest, in the playoffs. But we'll get to that in our more preview-ish episode. But if I look back on this split, like at this point, the project is still obviously a failure, as it is.
There are things I want to be excited about for them. It's just that like a lot of them feel incidental, right? Not like conscious things they're doing. Because like I really liked their first draft against Misfits, right? Because first off, I think Misfits throw it immediately by going Gwen first, just because Misfits, they are a one-style team and they should just accept that. But with this, they're no longer going, tank top, just all in on our carries, Neon and VTO in team fights, right? But they do that, and then you end up with Zoe Trundle from Fnatic. That's nice. And then it's Vi, Sivir from Misfits, so they're all in on Engage. So the final 2 picks from Fnatic, given that your opponent's all in on Engage, are Renata and Ornn, right? And I really like that because they've gone full disengage into that Engage, so I think they just like insta-won when they did that, right?
Yeah.
I like it. It's really easy draw for Zoe to play through. Mid almost doesn't matter at that point. And then in the tiebreaker game, right, it's first pick Poppy for Misfits, which is full disengage, and then the response is to go Ornn and Trundle, which doesn't really make much sense there. And then it goes Silas, who's now going to be playing with like Ornn ult, potentially Trundle ult, and the Philios, so we've got like full disengage here. And they go Talia Ezreal, which is really, really nice for like poke maybe, if you want to like do space into poke, etc. But then they end with Pyke. And it's like, I don't really get what you want Pyke to do here, because you've done that after they've already picked Yuumi, and you have no way other than Poke to get into them, but they're going to sustain the fuck out of all of that.
Yeah.
So you haven't fought this draft through like the other ones, right?
No,
it's incidental.
I would say that the Pyke pick was probably just a comfort pick in that case, where it was just, okay, it's basically on the line here if we're going to be in the upper bracket or not. And maybe they thought, okay, we've drafted ourselves into a hole a bit. Let's just go with something we know we can play well individually for Hylissang in that case. But
they also ban Lulu and Mumu when they could opt into poke and disengage here, and then you don't care about either of those, but they give them healing enchanters that would be really good into their poke comp, right? And they all in on the poke comp with Ezreal. So it's like the good decision you made in the initial Misfits game was incidentally a good decision. There isn't actually a system of thought here, right? It's incidental. So every time I find something that I like about them, it's like, is it really a consistent thing? I don't really know if there are any consistent things on this Fnatic lineup. And I hate that because I like so many of the players individually. And I think Wonder's had a really, really good split. And it's a shame because I hope that they will be really good individual players on other teams maybe next season. I assume they're going to make changes. But there could also be a way where joining this team ended up being a decision that they didn't know was going to be as bad as it was and might end up shaping the rest of their futures, and I hate that idea. A player like Humanoid has so much more to give, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for them, I think there is a chance, obviously, that they redeem themselves through this lower bracket, but I think that if I look at their season overall, because it has been so very much hit or miss with individual performances stepping up in order to get them across the finish line for the most part. In best of fives, now I'm doing preview anyway, you can maybe win one game, but if you're going to be inconsistent, you're going to be punished anyway. So that's the whole thing about best of 5. It's about consistency, and Fnatic has been very inconsistent. So
I agree with that.
That's my worry for them there. Overall, I very much agree with the sentiment that I really like the concept of this lineup, and I'm just mostly sad and disappointed that it hasn't worked. And regardless of how the split ends for them, they're probably scratch themselves behind their ears a little bit to say, okay, how the hell did we end up in this spot?
I mean, gameplay wise, I feel like the lineup is well designed, which means that it has to be
personal
non-gameplay factors. Yeah, like those kinds of things. And I could also then understand from like a management perspective that you have like Yamato Cannon in there, and he's good with personalities, is kind of a thing that a lot of people think.
Yeah.
So maybe you figured it was fine there. But like it's in that kind of area, right? Like the personality management that you have to look at. Because there are like ERL teams I can think of right now where it was actually, this is a good fit gameplay wise, but personality wise in the long term, this was never going to work out, right? I'm not thinking about the obvious one you guys might be thinking I'm thinking of. Because like with NG, you just never touch that. But like these things do end up mattering, right?
Yeah,
you can't have like a clique of people, like 2 separate cliques of people in one team. If your personalities clash so much that there are divisions there, you'll never be able to work through your problems properly.
Right.
So these kinds of things can matter, and it doesn't necessarily mean that someone's being a bastard or something. Again, NG is like way out there. But that's all I can really think of with this, because gameplay-wise, it should have worked, and yet some of these guys, in terms of gameplay, have had like personality transplants, right? Like this is not these aren't the fundamentals that Razorg adheres to. And we've seen in interviews, he's saying straight up, these aren't even the things I would do. I'm just trying to do what the team wants me to do.
Yep.
But what the fuck kind of conversations are going on in here? Like it's this. That's what has to be looked at.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good way to transition into a team, which I think is a very good example of making things work by not necessarily pulling together the best players individually, but fitting personalities together. And that's G2. Because G2 is completely having like joking around all the time. You have a Targamas in there who's a very quiet guy. You have Jankos in there who's the senior guy who's gonna ground everybody in the moments that it's necessary. But then you have Flacket, Caps, and Broken Blade who are just joking around all the time. And I think that this team, I genuinely didn't expect them to finish first. Halfway through the split, and obviously they end up in a tie with Mad Lions, but because of the tiebreakers, they end up in first. And they are now the first seed as well. They're going to Worlds. But that team as well, it's so crazy to me that they have pulled it back together from the start that they had to making it into first place again. Because if you remember, this team had one of the worst early games in the split of any team that played, and they were consistently falling behind and then relying on individual performances sometimes, but mostly about catching mistakes by opponents in order to pull back their game. Now, this wasn't always the case. They had solid mid game and late game as well, but they themselves also said, our early game is just very bad. And I'm very pleasantly surprised, actually, and I'm very happy for them that they're going to Worlds. It's always fun to see an MSI representative going to Worlds, because it's kind of a disaster if you go to MSI and then don't make Worlds. Yeah. So that's good for the team. But overall, on the team, if I look at the split, they started strong. Had a quite a big dip, I would say, in terms of finding how they wanted to play together. And in the final week, also because Caps just in monster mode once again.
Yeah, he did this last split as well.
Yeah, where he was just in week 7 and 8 of the spring split, he was just popping off, and now he's just being a monster again. Very, very cool to see that this team is sticking together, because as I said, right, you have a Targamas who is highly praised, but is a quiet guy, and you have a Flacket who people are like, really? Well, who the hell is Flacket, Most people were receiving him like this, of like, except if you're Spanish, obviously. And then And the Broken Blade was an obvious pickup, but the way it all fit together is such a great sign to me that more teams should take into account, where it's like, it's not about finding the most talented players. It's finding about people who fit into your puzzle piece and make that work. And that's what G2 did very well. We're once again seeing it paying off for them.
Well, the smart thing they did was take Targamas. I think, on terms of on-the-ground gameplay, once you have Targamas, you can then take any of the... Honestly, you could take like 20 to 30 different ADs, and you could make it work in this. Like, the role is like way too stacked in Europe. There are just too many people on a very similar level. Yeah. Like, meaningfully speaking, like, you don't... Like, you can take any of them and make it work.
Right.
So yeah, going for personality in that regard, yeah, that I could absolutely see that.
Absolutely.
But what I would also say is that G2, even when they were the super team, were not an early game team.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they pick early game comps, yeah, but they were never very good at early game. I remember after they lost the finals, one of the journalists asked them where they think they need to work on, and Yankees immediately said, first 10 minutes of the game. We are so bad at the first, like, we need to work on that, right?
Yeah.
And that's still their issue. But Targamas goes a long way to fixing that, right? Now, he's not able to be as proactive as he was with Shinkrov, who is a very strong, even in the last week, by the way, early game jungler.
BDS actually had a very solid last week in terms of their play, but yeah, we'll get to them a bit later.
Yeah. But he is also, because all of that was based on awareness and knowledge of his potential opportunities based on his wave spot, he was able to join Jankos' very reactive style of playing early and meet more of the faults of early that G2 normally come into contact with. Like, the reason they are never able to figure out this early thing is because Jankos is one of the most selfless junglers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but he, as a result, does not proactively try to put his team in a position where they are winning the map in early game. He just will always put himself in the position to make sure that this lane is not going to lose now. This lane's not going to lose now. This lane's not going to lose now. Maybe I'm losing jungle, but none of my lanes are going to lose now, right? Yeah. And those are fundamentally different thought processes, right? The thought process by which you get your team ahead is going to be much more based around efficiency. It's like what Razork was doing on Misfits, like what Cold was doing on Origin, like what Svenskeren was doing way back in Season 4 when it was Svenskeren versus Jankos, right? There have been junglers that do this. They're not as flashy. They're much more controlled, though, and... but ultimately, like, that same thing Jankos does and is very good at, and you have to be very sharp and on point to do, right, in early game, that causes them to never quite figure out the early game systems. It's also the same reason why their mid game is so fucking dangerous. Because if you overstep in any way, shape, or form, and there's ever any kind of a play that can be made on your champions out of items, which on G2 are almost always, except for that weird Sejuani weekend, high damage champions, you are dead. He's going to instantly see that, instantly react to it. You are grouped on, your jungler was not as fast as him, your jungler was making plans, but Jankos the whole time was just reacting, and he's going to react to the situation faster than others. This is a major part of G2's mid-game. Even when they were a super team, it's a major part of their mid-game now. It's why this guy still goes for, like, Pantheon. He went for it in the final week even as well, right? He's the same reason why their early game will never be so strong. It's the same reason why their mid-game will always be so strong. And it both starts and ends with Jankos. And obviously Broken Blade. I think Broken Blade was a really good addition to the team, even though he doesn't, like... He clearly is like a carry-only player, right? But but that's fine for them because they have to make these comeback plays in mid-game a lot, and he's always going to be a champion that you can do that on, right? Like, just hit an arrow Targamas and Yone will insta-press R and the fight's over. Right?
Exactly.
Like, beautiful, I love it. It works, you know? It works, and I love that.
Well, I think with them, obviously they've tried to diversify their play a lot. They've tried to adapt to it in Spring Split as well. You know, Dylan Falco said, we were very shamelessly admitting we're playing towards top. That's clearly our game plan. But towards the later stages, they said we're trying to diversify as well. To varying degrees of success. And obviously, you kind of have to try something else at some point to see, okay, can we diversify? How is it going to play if we're going to be in a spot where we have to play through through mid or through bot more? Is it something we're going to be able to do? But I think for G2 regarding that early game, because we have discussed as well on the show that Jankos sometimes is wandering around just aimlessly in terms of what he had to do on the map. It seemed like he was always trying to either maybe find an invade or a contest or a pick, but didn't really do anything. And as a result, still lost his camps and would be very far behind. And I think what we are seeing, it's the growth of G2. It's also because, a player like Caps he admitted to saying, I'm gonna ramp up towards playoffs. Then, you're gonna be able to do more with it as a jungler, because you're finding that star player that you can play around as a jungler more. I do think that I am quite worried for this G2 on like an international stage, where I know you don't watch international games, but or other leagues, but I've been watching the LPL playoffs, and those early games, they are something else. So I'm really scared to see what's gonna happen there.
That's what ruined them, right? That's what ruined them.
Yeah, so I'm really scared to see what's gonna happen there. And I mean, like, last year they didn't even make Worlds, so that also speaks to still having weaknesses. But if you're gonna be in this position where you're gonna have Caps in super form, you're gonna have Broken Blade on the carry, you're gonna have Targamas roaming around, Flakked, just be stable in your lane, it's fine, and he does that well. Like, this team obviously has the potential to win the LEC, probably do something at Worlds, but I think overall, if I look at this split, I wouldn't say that they've grown a lot compared to Spring Split, and that's what my biggest how do you say that? My biggest gripe, I guess, with this G2 lineup is like, okay, but have you changed much in Spring? Have you developed a lot, or are you just back at the point where you were at the end of Spring Split, or is that your ceiling?
I think they are a lot more consistent in the execution of the one style they play, and I'm fine with them having one style, and I think it's also in meta. So I'd say they've developed, yeah, but I've also never been a guy who thinks you need more than one style to even win Worlds. At least not for the last 4 years. So I do think I think they've developed. And I think you could play semantics with whether they've technically grown, given that they still do the same thing that they did back then. Definitely people's opinions of them have sobered. I'm not seeing people say Flakked is one of the best ADs or something like that anymore, which is good, because that was getting a bit absurd at a point. It was really quite wild, to be honest, especially when he was one-tricking Kai'Sa at MSI. But I also think Sivir meta is really, really good for this G2 team, right? Twitch would also be a good champion for this G2 team. Yeah, he has played it once. These kinds of champs are actually really good for them. I think Flakked's in a position where not only can he play champions he's comfortable on, but he can play champions that his team's playstyle really, really enjoys, right? And I love that Targamas is willing to go for Ashe support, because that's a really, really good pick for such an all-in cross-map team, right? So I'm really confident about the situation they're in, and I'm confident in a way that I wasn't in Spring. And it's because of a lot of the things we've seen from them here. The Misfits comp that they picked was brilliant, right? There was fuck all damage on Misfits' side, but whatever. But the Yone, Silas, Sivir, Ashe, it's so all in on the one thing they do really well anyway, and it shows a level of awareness from them that I think is very encouraging, right? Because I don't think these are flukes. I do think they're aware how they play. And I also like that Caps is moving more and more into map play, and has been doing so for 3 years. But I like when I see him do Lissandra Pantheon drafts, right? Stuff like this is really, really nice to see from him. And yeah, he's doing that thing again where just the final few weeks he becomes Faker Reborn. That's when he did that last split, it was so wild to me, because I felt like it went so under the radar somehow, because everyone got way overhyped about VTO. Whereas Caps was
Really?
clearly just the best. Yeah, Caps was what, last split? Yes, absolutely.
No, but do you really think it went under the radar? Like, because I think people were hyped on VTO because of the split in its entirety.
Yes, because Caps was clearly the best mid laner in Europe for the final 3 weeks. But everyone was just talking about how good VTO was. Even if you go back and look at like caster tweets and stuff, it was all about VTO.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, there's always there's always a narrative, right? And maybe Cap suffers from the problem that people have very high standards.
People were genuinely saying this guy was Chovy and shit like this. Like, it was insane what was going on with VTO.
I mean, the Chovy narrative doesn't make any sense, because Chovy stands out because he's an absurdly good laner, and VTO is a mediocre laner. You know, like
the only guy who rated VTO.
Yeah, okay, you've said it 5 times now.
Was VTO
who said, yeah.
Yes, but it has to be repeated because you somehow just forgot. So if you keep it, I'm gonna repeat it. All right?
No. What did I forget?
So overpraised. You forgot that everyone was overhyping him in the last few weeks back then.
No. I'm saying relative to Cap, because people were like,
Cap was just the best. Like, everyone should have just been talking about Cap's performances the last few weeks.
Yeah, but I'm trying to find an explanation for it, which is like, for example, I personally did see Caps performing well week 7 and 8. Like, I thought maybe that's my bubble then, but I do think that people have higher expectations of Caps than what they saw up until that point. Which is probably why they were like, oh, you know, like, what is Caps doing? And because he has such a high ceiling that we know if he isn't performing at that level, that people may be not as excited about him. Whereas VTO, after last year, had a much lower ceiling of expectations, and because he exceeded those expectations to the people were very excited about him. So that's probably why that happened. But I will say, if I look at this G2 lineup, like in terms of how they perform, it's kind of like a sign, you know, where it's like, okay, during spring they performed, then they had their playoffs run, start of MSI, and they dipped again, and you saw the final like edge or whatever you want to call it of that peak they had, or dwindling down at the start of spring or at the start of summer, then they're down again, and now they're on the up again. So I'm just wondering, if they're gonna, like, how long this next wave of them is gonna be, because to me it very much feels like they really, when a new patch hits, they need to mold the available champion pool or whatever into what they want to do, and that's the biggest question mark for me. So, well, playoffs is gonna obviously be on a new patch as well. I don't think it's gonna be wildly different. If I recall correctly. The turret damage should be fixed. Riot, please, for the love of God.
They did patch that, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That should be fixed. So maybe that's gonna change things again. But overall, I mean, I'm still very happy to see G2 back at the level that I had hoped they would continue to be at. Maybe that was idle hope to begin with, because is any team going to stay as consistent throughout an entire year? Probably not. But yeah, good to see Caps getting back in shape. When he does his magic, you can't just do anything but just like, okay, what can I do here? You know, that Silas game of him was just insane. You can see him like in the Matrix.
Yeah, the Silas game was nuts, actually.
Yeah.
Like, that was already a difficult game to play out for Misfits, but he just started doing some dumb shit during that game, and it was like, I don't even know him. I don't even know. That was wild.
What can you do? Alright, split retrospective. Any other team? Well, maybe we should talk about Vitality, actually. Because that is a project and a half.
They have the biggest loss streak right now in LEC. There you go.
Do they? Let me see, actually.
Astralis have 3 losses.
Oh, yeah, they have 4.
Have 4.
Yep.
Yeah, 4 in a row.
Yeah, and it started with a loss to Astralis, actually. So, there you go. If that had gone the other way around, Astralis would have been on the biggest loss streak.
I mean, they were really close to beating SK, no? Like, they were steamrolling
Vitality,
them
yeah. That was a big throw. That was a tilter.
Oh, man. Yes. that game especially was like one of those things where I was saying how like you could see like Kazi thinks one thing and then the rest of his team's like kind of hesitating. I ain't gonna say who, but there was some guy where it's like you're basically not playing with this champion at this point. You know? Alright? I like begins with a G, ends with an O and has an alley in the middle, you know?
Yeah.
But like it was kind of mental, to be honest, what was going on in that game in the team fights, especially because it was a Sivir comp of all things.
Yeah.
So it's like this.
Yeah,
should
I
be
thought
really
Sivir
easy.
was like, oh man, there you go, because Sivir is really really gross.
Yes.
And
And the comps are easy to play.
yeah,
Right?
very easy.
I had forgotten, in fairness, that Yasuo is actually pretty good into those comps. So cats off to SK for remembering that. And they also picked a Juggernaut, no? They picked Darius, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's
Into
Gen X on Darius.
Yes.
Who was
they
kind of
did.
getting camped, but poor guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he had no TP. So
No.
yeah, that's gonna end up happening.
Yeah.
So I like that about their comp, but was it into a full dive? I'm trying to go back to find. So
Let me
Vitality.
see. Actually, I have the comp here somewhere in my notebook, probably. They
Yeah.
had this Mad SK, Rogue Mad.
Jarvan Galio, yeah, kind of. I mean, Ornn, Ari, Sivir do have options here, but yeah, like it's not a perfect Darius comp, but yeah, like they had like SK did have a good comp into a
Yeah.
Sivir composition, and obviously Vitality played it really badly. But like this is also like Haru's best week as well, which is really sad. Because I still feel like if they kept self-made the whole time, they would have made it in. But I obviously don't know what was going on full behind the scenes.
Nope.
Obviously, the few snippets we've caught on certain streams don't seem very good.
Yeah.
It all seems quite political, but like I don't know, man. Like at the end of the day, like sure. So that first game, yeah, you had those issues. The other two games though were a lot like I don't know, like. Did Perkz ever use a choke? I don't think he was ever a choker, but like
No,
the
if anything, is the opposite, right? Where he would step up in the most difficult moments. Well, I think so. I think for Vitality, obviously heading into the split, I thought, what are they doing substituting a jungler? Okay, spring split's not what you want, right? You place 5th, but now what you're gonna do is you're gonna restart basically the whole team, because what little synergy you managed to get at the end of spring, by the end of spring, you're just gonna have to completely rebuild with a guy whose English isn't great. It's communicative and it's fine, you know, and it's great. It's good for in-game, but they said, right, you know, like communication in the first weeks was rough with Haru, and I don't know. I just don't understand that reasoning. And we saw like the first weeks, Haru was not very involved with the team in terms of what he did. He was like mostly AFK farming is what people said online, and it's a bit of an exaggeration, obviously, but he just wasn't involved in the playmaking until the mid and late game. And then when Vitality said, oh, or like when people asked, why did you bring Haru on? It's okay, we wanted to have a more stable late game. But then
Selfmade was their early game. You know, he was so good early as well, especially in playoffs. It was insane.
So I just don't understand that trade-off to be there. Like I cannot imagine there that there wasn't some degree of personal relationship that aren't going well there, because otherwise that trade-off seems weird to me. Because now instead of spending the split on working on your late game, you're spending the split working on your early game, and it doesn't pay off.
Yeah.
So like. What?
And they had Bo, so like they spent money on. First, they had Selfie on the bench the whole time, so they spent money on him. They spent money on Haru, right? And reported figures of that are in like 6 figures, right? For the buyout for him. And then they spent money on Bo, who you have to imagine can't have been cheap, right?
No.
I don't know any reported figures on that. And they had that plus Alfari Perkz, right? Like, come on. And then maybe you save money on Lavrov, but because you have him like the whole time. But Kazi is coming in from Mad Lions
For free,
right?
though.
For free,
Yeah.
in fact. Like, so maybe you save money on your bot lane, but the rest of them are so expensive. Like, how much money has been sunk into this lineup, and then being horribly mismanaged, and yeah, like the situation that you say, like the fact that that can even present itself in this lineup, it's like insane to me.
Yeah.
And not only is it horribly mismanaged, it also sounds somewhat like the problems were from that area, right? Like we have our snippets on streams. It's just, it's just kind of mental to see this horror story compared to definitely what it could have been.
Yeah.
If it was able to stay the course and if it was managed differently, right? Like,
Well, they also brought in extra coaches during the split to help them, and it amounted to nothing in the end. Well, I guess at some point we were saying, okay, the early game has gotten better, but I mean, it's all for naught, right? They completely collapsed in the final week, and I don't think anybody predicted this ending after the first 7 weeks. People were like, okay, I guess Vitality's making it.
yeah, that was an assumption, yeah.
Yeah. And that is it. I don't know. I think if I look at the first half, to me, I would say Perkz had a very solid split. He was the main reason for they fit. People forget this. But Vitality finished the first half of the split 5-4. Which was already a very close split, but they were 5-4, which is, okay, I guess decent, especially if you consider that you have a new jungler to work with, right? And in those weeks, Perkz was legitimately performing the most consistent of the team, because we had the Karzi Labrov bot lane, who was basically nowhere. We had Haru AFK farming, and Alfari was good as well individually. I have to give him props there as well. I rated him highly at the end of the split still, because of the early performances he gave as well. But, after those 4 weeks where you had those two individuals basically dragging the team forward, I guess Haru came online more, but at the end it all collapsed. It just doesn't make sense to me. I'm having such a hard time making sense of how this happened and how this project could fail in the end. Because on paper, I guess you could say this lineup should at least have gotten to Worlds. Even
for sure.
Yeah, even if you say, okay, they have their early game is an issue or something like this, like, okay, but still, these players should make Worlds. Karzi and Labrov wanted to play together because they had played before, they are friends, but they had some of the poorest synergy of any bot lane duo. And then you have the insane talent of somebody like Perkz, a renowned player who's shown time and time again to step up when it matters, to be able to pull teams together, to lead them. You have Alfari, one of the best top laners on the Western Hemisphere, and it just falls apart. The
Perkz one's a real Morty mind blower, to be honest. That I mean, he hasn't had the best split overall, but I did not expect such a collapse. Right, such bad decision making in team fight situations by him and clutch decisions by him. Right, like he was throwing these fights. He just straight he was the MVP for Fnatic. Like, it was, and I felt really bad for Alfari, because Alfari had a really good game there.
Yeah, really
getting
good
some
game
impossible situations, but the follow up was never there. The other veteran carry just was not stepping up. And as a result, they could not get a single win here. And the SK game should have been free.
Yeah, that was such a oh my god.
Yeah,
it might have been honestly just have been the tilter, because I don't know, but I mean, Perkz is a very passionate player, and if you mess up, he will tell you mess up, right? Because he wants to win. It's the only way. That's the only thing he cares about. And obviously, he'll pull his teammates together before a game and stuff like this. But if you mess up, Perkz will tell you messed up. I can only assume also by the same snippet that after that loss against SK, maybe something just broke within the team altogether. There was no way going forward. But I do also want to mention, actually, the Vitality staff. They have such a big staff behind this. This is not a project that's allowed to fail.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I also kind of question the people they brought on, right? Because they brought on, I'm not questioning how good the people they brought on are. It's just that they brought on game knowledge coaches, it looks like to me.
Yeah.
Right? Like they bought in Hyanan, right? They brought in this spell guy. I don't know anything about the spell guy, right? But he
Mhm.
doesn't strike me as like I'm bringing him on as like the kind of thing that you see if you brought on like a sports psychologist or something, right?
Mhm.
Like they and that guy came in because they ended up not keeping what was his name? So I know him as Rangers X, but he has a different name, a more weeb name that I refuse to name actually. So I'm not even going to bother looking it up. But they had him on for playoffs, right? And in playoffs, they actually had some pretty good. They had some pretty good gameplay. But like you're bringing on game knowledge coaches, and I don't think that's what the team really needed. You know. Um, so I don't understand those decisions. Like I don't doubt that maybe game knowledge was lacking in your staff, but I don't think that game knowledge was what was lacking overall. Like
Mhm.
maybe keep Kianan there for like bot lane or something, but you needed to be bringing on people who could manage them. You know, that kind of thing. I
Yep.
mean, I mean, at this point, just scorch earth it and go back to the start. Like, I'll be really interested to see if the budget gets slashed for next year or not, because I can't imagine the budget stays. But I don't know. Team Liquid kept going after multiple failures like this, and look where they are now.
Yeah.
So maybe it is. Maybe you just keep gambling. Like the meme says.
Until something sticks.
90% of gamblers quit before they're about to hit it big. Vitality are going in with that mindset.
I mean,
Just
Vitality
Team Liquid being the
for
proof.
such a long time, Vitality had the kind of developing talent angle, right? When it was Duke in charge, he was really into to finding new players.
Yeah.
With Skeens is a player he really cared about and really wanted to develop. For example, and they brought in players like Militia was there, like for one split, I think. They tried to bet on rookies, but then obviously they had a complete change of mind and just built the super team. I'm also very
Wasn't their
curious.
first attempt at this super team though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah. But
yeah,
what I'm gonna say is I spoke at the beginning of the year. I spoke with
yeah.
I read this big article about how Vitality built their super team. I spoke to Perkz, GrabbZ, Labrov, and Mephisto all about how this whole project came together. And it's just, in retrospect, I'm very proud of that article. It's a really good article. But now I'm like, oh man, I wasted all the time on this, like. Anyway, it drove the narrative. Like it was an important pillar of I guess for me for the narrative to hear their voice. But what I so distinctly remember is talking to Mephisto and saying, okay, but what is your goal for this team? What are you gonna do for this team? Because he hadn't been the head coach of Vitality, but now became the head coach, and he said, well, my goal is to get Perkz what he wants. And Perkz wants to win the LEC, and said that's gonna be my goal. But the way he spoke about like the whole project, he was making himself sound so subservient to Perkz, as in okay, and Perkz is a player who will take over the team if he's given the opportunity, right? Like if you
Yeah.
don't tone him down, or make him realize that the other players also at least should be on board with what he says. He will take over that team because he's such a strong visionary in terms of how he sees the game. And I remember thinking I don't think that's gonna work too well, because if you look at the role that a coach like GrabbZ played on G2, it was managing the players.
Yeah.
He was there to make sure
Yeah.
Perkz didn't take
Exactly.
over the team, and he was there to
And
make sure that Jankos and Mickey, the quieter guys on the team like that, or Caps, would also speak up, or also have room to share their thoughts. And um, I don't get the impression that any of the Vitality players were necessarily like repressed on the team or something like this, but it does strike to me that that this team was just completely without a vision together. It was just like, okay,
yeah.
what do we need to fix in the moment, rather than where are we going as a team.
The way I think of GrabbZ and Mephisto are very different, and I think that's actually like a really good point as well, because they've both worked with Perkz now, and I'm not sure it's that GrabbZ prevents Perkz taking over the team. I think it's that GrabbZ is really good and understands that when you facilitate a team like this to work together, you have to make sure you have to almost play Inception with them, right? You have to make sure that they
think,
believe it to be as natural as possible, right?
Yeah.
But the purpose of doing so is to form as few divisions as possible and keep the flow going, right? He's really good at taking these personalities and making them a team of personalities that fit, right? And I think the biggest compliment he could receive is that everybody just assumes that personality is taken into account. I think it's incidental with Perkz whether he takes this into account or not. I don't think Perkz knows all these guys are going to fit really well personality-wise together.
No.
And I think you need a coach who knows how to make that work and flow, and that was definitely GrabbZ. And that definitely isn't Mephisto for me, right? I think that's almost opposite. Of him for me, and I think because like I don't want it to make it seem like it was GrabbZ versus Perkz or something, or that it should be
no,
or that
it isn't,
or that it should be Mephisto versus Perkz. Like I'm not prescribing that or saying anyone did that. But Perkz does need that kind of a guy who's like, all right, we got your team, all right, and now I'm gonna make sure that you all actually flow and talk and understand and have fun and enjoy all of this, and it's all a 5-man unit. I'm over here, ignore me, like it's a nice 5-man, and that's what they needed for sure. Which is why, like the additional coaches they brought in, it's like I don't see these as the kind of guys who will encourage that environment or even think that's their job, right? And certainly you don't want one, because like, say you're bringing in people like Hyanan, right? What I immediately see there, and I'm not like flaming Hyanan for this or something, is an aspect of we're going to take the bot lane aside, you know? And be like, maybe this is what you guys should be doing. You don't want a team where you're constantly taking people aside here, which from the few snippets seems to be what was actually happening with Mephisto in charge there, right? You don't want these kinds of divisions there. You want everything to be as much of a group conversation as possible. Like, even when I remember the famous story of like Caps having the epiphany that like Kog'Maw would actually be really good in the finals, right?
Yeah.
They were 2v2ing like within the team there, right? It was a collaborative effort among everyone. And I think that aspect of it went under the radar, right? There was no, we take these guys aside. The team was taking itself aside as a 5-man, and I really like that they did everything together.
Yeah.
That was really good, and that's what you have to encourage. And I do put that on GrabbZ. Like, I do think GrabbZ did that to a large extent. And I think he's done that on other teams as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think, I don't know, I'm not sure what Vitality is going to do with this lineup, because what are you going to go for? Like, you probably want to keep Perkz, you know? Like that's like the pillar, the core player that this team was built around. Alfari, are you going to keep him? They're 100% like going to field Bo at the start of next spring. That's why they brought him in. So that's going to happen. And then
it would be a waste. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, like, well, they don't seem to care much about waste. So, you know, it's in terms of the...
Remains to be seen. If they don't have this budget again, I'll agree.
Yeah, fair. But then what are you going to do with the bot lane? If you're going to do that, you put a lot of faith in Labrov. You're paying Karti quite a lot of money as well. I have no clue. I have no clue what they're going to do there, or who you'd even pick up to if you have an Alfari, Bo, Perkz team. Who's going to fit in there, you know?
Do you keep Perkz? I don't know. Like, I feel like right now, if they can sell any of these guys and make a profit, they should just sell them. And then once they've done that, then they can decide what they want to do with the lineup, depending on who's left.
I mean, Fnatic might try to buy Perkz, actually. Because
the Fnatic lineup might explode off of this season for sure.
Yeah.
We have at currently 2 confirmed, potentially 2 more. Basically new organizations coming in, right? Either from mergers or full acquisitions. Currently, they're all like basically mergers, but to different varying degrees.
I mean, Heretics is buying the slots, so
it's 20% still Misfits.
Oh yeah, I mean they retain an ownership stake, but Heretics will be in control. Yeah.
But like it's like but the Koi Rogue one is like a full merge. But like there's going to be such a shift. I think they can afford to like see if they can offload any of their players there. Even if Bo's included in that, Bo's a really hot topic that, the difference between Bo and everyone else in Vitality is Vitality have not managed to make Bo look bad. So they could actually make some dollar, even selling him. And then I think once you've done all of this, see where you're at, right? And then build a team around whoever the fuck is left, right? But I don't think sitting here and being let's assume they keep these guys. I think fuck it, fuck all those assumptions. Just sell anyone you can right now, right? And then see what's left.
Well, for Perkz, the important part is that he wants to be able to believe that his team can win. That's the most important part for him. That's why he wanted to leave C9, because he saw how they were, the trajectory they were on. It was like, I don't think this is a team that can win anymore. And on Vitality, this is a team that he wanted to, he built to win. That's obviously not going to happen. So it also depends on what Vitality wants to do, indeed, if they're going to keep, also what Perkz wants to do. Because if Vitality goes to Perkz and says hey, we have this budget or whatever, and we want to, which players do you want to bring on or something like this, and they say, we're not going to be able to make that happen, he might just say, oh yeah, fuck it, sell me then, because that might be possible. Or if he sees, I mean,
alternatively, Vitality wouldn't be the first org to not give a fuck what Perkz wants.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, TSM Perkz. Here we go. I don't know.
Huh?
Yeah. Yeah. I really hope that TSM is not gonna join the LEC, because there's a very heavy speculation that they're the ones trying to buy. Yeah, but that they're gonna be the ones trying to buy the Astralis slot, but I do not want that orc in the LEC.
Well, I didn't say that wasn't true, but they won't make it.
Yeah. So, anyway. There's so much happening this year. I actually made an image.
God, the off-season. Oh, God, man, yeah. No, let's not.
It's gonna be
off-season things happening right now. It's so funny, actually.
It's crazy.
Bangers people aren't even going to consider could possibly be happening.
Yeah.
They'll see, and it's going to be, mad.
But even if you just on the surface look at the LEC when it started in 2019 and what it's going to look like at the start of 2023, there's 5 teams that are the same. There's 5 different teams. It's crazy. It's actually crazy. Yeah. Oh man, obviously it's gonna be so exciting. Yeah,
I love it. Also, hats off to Rogue, by the way. For their currently it's a leaked thing, but assuming it's a confirmed thing, I think that was a really good decision by them to do. I
mean they're buying a fan base.
Yeah.
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 It's so good for them. It's insane.
I mean, the brand itself, I really like the people on Rogue. They're the from a professional perspective, they're the most pleasant to work with as a journalist because they're very responsive. They are always open to do interviews. They will do interviews after a loss, equally as many as when they win. And they will be very flexible with finding a time with you if you need anything from them. So in those regards, and all the Rogue players are always been very good interviewees as well. At least the ones I've spoken to, and I've spoken to the lineups from 2020 until this one, except Malrang because of the English, but he doesn't seem like an ass either. So they're very pleasant. So I really like those guys, but. In terms of branding, and they are managed by Rec Global of VC, who is and they are based in NA in theory, and I think the NA department tells basically, okay, this is the budget you have or the direction you want to go. You have to go in. Where if my understanding is still correct, the European is very much just operations, the players buying and stuff like this. So, but what I was gonna say is, Rogue's brand is very non-existent. Rogue has been, if you look at the past 2 years, has probably been the best team in the LEC because of their consistency in overall throughout the years. If this was one huge competition that spanned 5 splits, Rogue would be the best team. But look at what they've done with their brand. People don't give a crap about Rogue as a team. They like a player like Odo.
Should win something then.
Yeah. But at the same time, even if even when G2 was losing, even when Fnatic was losing, they were pouring out content that was superior to what any other team was doing. And Rogue, they had the Odoamne swimming clip, which was cool. Like, it was very dramatic. But other than that, they do the voice comms. And
I'll tell you where they went wrong, right? I'll tell you where they went wrong, because this always blew my mind, right?
Sure.
When they upgraded their whole Ultra League roster, they should have used that as a start of their with the Polish team campaign. Because you don't even need fucking Polish players to be able to do that, right? Mad Lions get away with murder doing that every fucking year. They'll have like maybe one Spanish player. You can find easily one Polish. They've moved up Lucca, they've done it, right? Like, it's mind-blowing to me that they did not utilize the Ultra Liga connection, which is a title of one of the best articles I ever wrote, by the way, if you want to go back and check that out. They did not utilize the Ultra Liga connection properly. I think they absolutely should have been the Polish team in the LEC. I think they would have loved the shit out of that. At that point, like, you can bring in like niche Polish celebrities as like your guys. I don't know to this day why, I can't even remember his name now, but remember when everybody had like the big armed guy who's being an AD carry for like 5 trillion years? Jesus Christ.
Pookie.
Pookie style. I don't know why they wouldn't like, okay, Pookie style, come on as an influencer, you know? As like an ambassador.
Well, the thing is,
they had to do this shit.
They're gonna, from what I guess is that because of the merger, they're probably gonna ditch a Go Rogue in the the Polish league. Yeah,
this is something that like so many players already knew, by the way. Like so many.
Like
previously, it's like, let's see if we all want to go AJ Rogue, but this off season it was like, oh no one even knows they're going to exist next split, right? No, but the thing is, like, the Polish league. Like they kept on winning. They kept on winning that league, but they were also the only LEC team there.
But the thing is that people aren't excited about the league. You know, it's not a
Which people are.
But they. Yeah.
It was syndicated in Poland before any other country.
Sure.
They had it on their TVs there. That's why the stream viewers weren't that big, because they were literally watching it on TV as like a national pastime.
So you think if Rogue would have capitalized on that Polish, that it would?
Yes.
I mean, probably not LFL or LVP levels, but it would be.
They would have had a head start over those, though. There was a point where Polish League was like the Polish fan base was like the fan base that you wanted at one point. But they had a position really.
Well, there's many good Polish players in the LEC, or have been in the LEC. So
yes. Jankos, Vandoks. These guys love the shit out of League. And it used to be,
Trimby.
It used to be the Polish guys who didn't want to piss off. I remember that. It really used to be the Polish guys who didn't want to piss off. And these guys had inspired and stuff for ages. In
terms of branding, obviously.
Polska Goem and all that. They should have done that. I think if they'd done that, you wouldn't be saying this, but like they didn't do that. I fully agree with you. Like when I think about it, Rogue themselves did not have a proper identity. And I was trying to think what Olds came in and got one. Well, Mad Lions did win things, but they also do have such a presence in the Spanish scene.
Yeah.
And
I also think Mad Lions' product in the LEC is very underdeveloped in terms of branding. People like Mad Lions because they won and they have standout players. You know, like last year you had Karzi, who's joking. You have Armut, very charismatic guy. You know, players like that. Now they have Niski, you know, a huge brand appeal for them. But in terms of like what they do with the brand, I also don't think Mad Lions is doing a whole lot. I'm just saying for Rogue, it's such a good move for them to go to Koi because, hello, here's Spain, you know, like, and it's actually going to be curious to me to see because Heretics is also joining and they are also massive.
Yeah.
So you know, like, I wonder if that kind of is gonna play spoiler for them in terms of getting the fans along. But it should at least be a boost because it cannot get much worse. Actually, in the LEC studio, like sometimes you'll hear like the "Go Rogue Go," and it's a very small group, and it's like the husband of Anna Baumann, the who leads the Rogue operations here, and like they have like staff of Rogue there yelling like "Go Rogue Go!" It's like, yeah, I don't know, good that you support, but yeah, it's a bit like bit cringe.
Unicorns
your biggest fans is Yeah.
Yeah, Unicorns had a similar thing back in the day where they had Romain leading the cries of the small corner of Unicorns guys. They were so loud though.
Yeah.
Like if you when you were backstage, even with like the noise cancelling headphones, you could still hear them, right? And these guys would go like hoarse while they were doing it, you
Yeah.
know? Like my God, the chants from them. But that isn't
Yeah.
like that. Like it's a loud fan base, but it's not like a broad fan base. I think broad
Yeah.
fan bases require national identity to actually effectively do, and Rogue didn't even try to utilize that.
No.
Right?
No.
Which I think was missed.
But they also didn't do
because-
much around personalities in their team. You know, they don't do anything with like Larson. They call him his nickname is Ginger God. You know, like there's nothing of content that does anything with like him being like a Ginger God. It's such a cool brand you could build as Larson being like a Ginger God. Absolutely.
People get bullied for being gingers in the UK, so I'm not sure you want to go that way. Like, it actually has quite negative connotations in England.
No, but like people call him Ginger God
I just
online.
wanna say-
Online, he's not being bullied for being ginger here.
You
Like,
want to say, yeah, but it's difficult to market because you're talking about an English language thing to market here, right? And it's
yeah, but
they
come on,
shouldn't
the
have just gone
LEC,
with
the
Polish stuff.
LEC is all across Europe.
We're getting. Yes, but the most loudest, the Wales, all of that are not actually English speaking. That's why NLC gets fucking nothing.
No,
They're Spanish, they're French, they're Polish.
Yeah, but
and
that's exactly why you wouldn't have to fear about Larson getting bullied for being ginger because the
yeah,
NLC.
but also Ginger God doesn't do anything for that. I also on the Larson thing, you began that with personalities, and I can't laugh because Larson has like basically no real personality.
He's
So
getting
it's
out
a
of
bit
his shell
difficult
more.
to
He's
talk
a
about.
very quiet guy, but he's getting out of his shell more. He saw like he was on PGL or like an analyst segment in that final week, and he was doing pretty well there. But yeah, I mean, he's naturally a very quiet guy, but that doesn't mean that you can't do something with
I
him.
don't want to get bogged down on like the Ginger God aspect or even
Sure.
Larson specifically, but I do want to get bogged down on the thing that I actually don't think that building it around personalities is a good way to do it.
No, but I mean that's something you can capitalize on. If you look at G2 for example, they do this as well. Like they fit their players into the brand, but look at their skits. You know, like they had this really good Godfather skit, and it was like Fluck It with their duck. They find what makes their players unique and stand out.
Who defines GT's personality? Who
Carlos.
defines GT's personality? Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what Rogue don't have.
No, but you can if like I'm taking it one step further. Like you find your brand and they're like all about we're Rogue, you know, we're the hooded guys, and they had this clip I think last year where they had these with the Imagine Dragons soundtrack on and did this glowing mask and stuff like this, you know, like find some way to get people to be excited about the team.
That's where like that's where K Corp are winning, right? Because their personality is on Kometo, right? Like it's these figureheads that are.
I mean, Koi is Ibai, Eintracht Spandau is Hand of Blood.
Yeah, that's what eBay gives them. That's what I really like about the merger, right? And I think if you don't have that, trying to find the personalities within your team isn't going to work. You have to find it in some kind of like national identity, and that's why I think they should have gone Poland. Like Cloud9's greatest decision that they ever made was benching Jensen and Sneaky because those were the personalities they were building their whole brand around at that point. But so long as they did that, their brand was dependent on players that they may want to trade at some point, which is why I don't think it's good to do that. G2 can trade their whole lineup and you still know the G2 identity because Carlos will always have to be there, right? Like these figureheads are the big thing. I think doing it for players is very short-term thinking, right?
No, but I'm saying if you don't have something like that, right? In the past years, I'm talking about the past years. You know, you got to do something, and they just did nothing.
Yeah, and I'm saying I think it should be like the national identity thing, and I think going the personality route is the way it doesn't work.
Yeah, I think they should have. Like even now, man, I had this. This is a very big tangent, by the way, we're going on, but it's fine. This is the loose.
This isn't a tangent. This is about LEC. This is fine.
Sure, yeah, but it's not really retrospective about this summer split. But
it doesn't have to be.
No, it's fine. It's a bit loose. Who cares? Like I had this thing about like Malrang, you know, like because he was constantly ganking and stuff like this. You know, that's what he was always doing. I had this thing where you're like, okay, make a skit where like Rogue is eating in a restaurant and Malrang's running up and down serving them food, and then at one point they collectively choke, you know, because that's the Rogue narrative where they choke in their food. So like, then take the piss out of yourself a little bit, like, yeah. There's something like this. I don't know, but
I like that because like it's a Rogue narrative.
Yeah.
Right. At least in terms of like effective branding, I like that. Personally, I would always prefer it to be on the players because I think it is all about the players. But from an org perspective, you actually want it to be the org. And if they had someone whose personality was like Cloak and Dagger, whatever the fuck they were doing, I don't fucking know, then sure, that would work. But they never had that kind of a figurehead, and they never leaned into their figurehead's personality. Right? Whereas I feel like in the Polish scene, there were so many people they could have brought on as, right? This was Origin and Astralis's biggest issue with Origin is that they didn't keep Peke as the figurehead.
Yeah.
If they had done that, Peke front and center, whole personality.
He's completely disappeared. Yeah.
Would have been. So, I actually saw a picture of him recently. Actually, he's grown like a fat beard, man. It's insane.
Crazy.
He's like if they kept that, then they actually had the brand. But they seem to think Origin works on its own as a brand.
Right.
It only works its own as a brand as an extension of Peke, in the same way Juice is an extension of Carlos, in the same way that TSM was an extension of Reginald, and the collapse of Reginald as a figurehead anyone wanted to have anything to do with was the collapse of TSM as a brand, right? Cloud9 took very big risks to develop the Cloud9 brand. They did that in a year where they had won everything. That was the year where Cloud9 even won CSGO, they won Overwatch, they won everything, so they could take risks with their league brand to try to make, you know, Cloud9 itself a thing, right? And Jack started being a front and center personality.
Yep.
Right? Like, you have to do that at the end of the day. That's the real separation between brands that work and brands that don't. None of this player shit. Players are incidental. The brand has to be able to survive the players, or it.
Oh yeah, I mean it does, but
and only the owners can give you.
I'll reiterate what I said. Was like they weren't doing anything, and they didn't have a pillar like that. So then just do something, you know. But they weren't, and now they have Koi. The details, obviously, of the equity or.
If you Ibe.
Yeah. Oh, that's a big guy.
You win.
Yeah. Is there anything we wanted to, like, if we loop it back to Rogue about their split? I think this split was a split that people will mostly remember for Malrang. Struggling very much with finding the same impact he was perceived to have in the spring split.
We did Fnatic with bot struggling, right?
Yeah.
And then we did, what was the next team we did after Fnatic?
We had G2 Fnatic and Vitality.
We had G2, we had Vitality. So with G2, we had like Flackid's getting rated properly now and blah, blah, blah. So we're on Rogue, right? And immediately it's Malrang. And it's like, I'm just thinking, it's so weird how all the players just randomly fall into the exact ratings I gave them at the beginning of the year.
Oh, God.
I got so much flame for. Every time. I'm glad you guys have joined me on Malrang and Upset and all the rest of them, but like I'm just saying it didn't have to be this way.
I think the sentiment around Upset is still that like many people still think Upset is very good, but he just got screwed over.
Oh, he has his followers for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. But I mean, in terms of Malrang, he did have the game against who was it?
There was a game he played well.
Excel.
Sure. I think it was a Jarvan game. Was that Jarvan?
Cool. Rogue Excel, yeah, the first pick Jarvan, yeah.
That game was good from him.
Yeah, he played super well. Overall, he's very much struggled to have a big impact on the team, and it was mostly because of the laners that Rogue survived and did as well as it did. I think that's very clear. Now, I will say that what surprised me most about this Rogue is that previous splits, Rogue was the best of one team because they understood the meta very quickly and knew how to adapt their team to it. And they had a very good meta read, and they didn't at the start. If people forget, they went 0-2 in their first two games, but then they turned it around, and that is what impressed me so much about Rogue in the first half, at least, because they had an insane win streak, the longest one of the entire split of any team. They went on an 8-game win streak, which is crazy. and then they lost to G2, and then obviously they had a pretty rough period afterwards, where they went. So after that 8-game win streak, they went combined. Let me see, 4-5. It's not too bad, but obviously a significant drop off. So Rogue Split has very much had its peak early, and then fell off.
I mean, for much the same reasons. I wasn't surprised to not see Larson on the in the top 3 mid lane pool for All Pro, but that's just because I'm used to people underrating him. I still think he's consistently an incredibly strong laner, and I still think that this is a team that is very solo lane based.
Yeah.
Comp is consistent, but something that they are definitely lacking now is what Hansama was doing for them was he was the guy who
the playmaker.
Like, okay, I know I can do the 1-for-1 here and we'll win the fight off of it, right? He was the guy that can make those clutch decisions that aren't obvious, that have an element of risk to it, and execute them perfectly, and they don't have that anymore. Comp's really consistent, and I think he has had a very good split, but he isn't that, right? And Trimby was never really that, and Malrung is sometimes that, basically when he's on Lee Sin. But it's not like, that's also the thing Malrung gave them that I think that they needed to retain last split, is that he was able to do really good things in mid game playmaking wise, but often he had to do those because he put them in a bad position early on anyway. I just think that I hate saying clutch factor or stuff like that, but like it is that kind of a play is the thing that they are lacking with this current lineup.
Yes.
But I still think their lanes are really good.
Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, they just have very good laners. That's undeniable. But they need the playmaker in the team. Sometimes I think, you know, like you see it sometimes from Larson, you see it sometimes from somebody like Comp. Trimby can be a playmaker, but it's maybe just somebody who just says, "Guys, we're going." You know, like we're pressing the button. A shot caller. In that regard.
Severe.
Yeah. Just not severe. Just press R and it's a shot call, you know, like, guys, we're going. Okay, I guess we're going. But I think for Rogue overall, their split still very solid. You know, they end in 3rd place, and they are in the upper bracket based on points for the playoffs. So they need to win one best of 5 if G2 doesn't if G2 doesn't beat Misfits. If G2 beats Misfits, because of the system, Rogue would automatically qualify already, and Mad Lions would also automatically qualify for Worlds already.
Keep doing this based on regular split. It's so mental to me how Rogue keep qualifying like that. Like they keep, if ever there's a team where it's like, well, they didn't win a single playoff game, but they got in, it's Rogue. Every time.
I mean, they literally they qualified for Worlds that way in 2020 summer. Directly by being first, because we also got an extra spot then.
In 2021, they did a similar collapse, no?
Well, they beat Misfits barely in the upper bracket. They finished first. Big Misfits, beat them 3-2 barely, and it was only because of the inspired Viego pentakill that they made that. It was literally, and then they went 0-3 and 0-3. So, and they completely bummed out.
It was so cringe, actually.
Yeah.
People forget how bad that particular Misfits lineup was playing at that point as well. Like, it was so... That was also a miracle that they got into playoffs. Another time where their coaching staff got robbed of Coach of the Split. But yeah, like, they keep... I don't know how they keep doing it. Oh, I do know how they keep doing that. We put too many points based on
yes,
like,
it makes spring splits very relevant. Yeah. So, but I mean, overall, I would say that this Rogue lineup, like we saw them perform well in spring. You know, they made it through the upper bracket of the spring split playoffs. They reverse swept Fnatic. So this is a lineup that at least shows more resilience in best of 5s, because that was a big problem of the last Rogue lineups, where they would collapse if they went on a downward spiral. And this is a lineup that definitely doesn't do that. Now, in terms of gameplay, I really wonder what the role of Malrung is going to be in playoffs, because I'm not sure how that plays out in best of 5. I don't think I've seen something like this before, at least not in a very clear memory, where there's a lineup that's okay, the jungler is might get exposed. How are you going to solve your issues? But Overall, I would still say Odo Amne is playing well for his age. He had a few very rough games this split, but he also in most of the other games was just super consistent. Larsen is super consistent. Comp and Trimby were consistent. It's just I very much agree with you in terms of they need to find somebody who pulls the guys together and says, "Guys, we're doing this and we're doing it now."
Every time that I've tried to like break this team down in previous seasons and being like, they've shown here, they can do all of this, so maybe in playoffs they'll put it all together.
Yeah.
Fuck it. This time, feet up, they're gonna look exactly the same going in. Fuck it. And that way, maybe I'll get surprised and not jinx it or something. Because like, it's gonna be so horrible if it's the same thing again and they somehow make Worlds or some shit. Like, please no.
They'll make Worlds. They'll make Worlds. Absolutely.
At least, like, the first matchup they have against Mad Lions, I think Mad should take that. So
yeah, probably. I think so as well. The thing is that the way they order, they've scheduled the broadcast is thankfully, because, as I said, if G2 beats Misfits, that locks in Rogue and Mad Lions because they cannot fall into the lower bracket behind Misfits. And Misfits would be one win away, basically, from making Worlds in the lower bracket, and Rogue and Mad would automatically drop before, and one of them is going to drop before it. The other one is obviously going to advance in the upper bracket and then drop to the lower bracket semi-final or whatever you want to call it.
It's so bollocks, actually.
Yeah, it is crazy, but
spring.
But at least the way they're broadcasting it is like it's some like the tiniest sprinkle of redemption is that they're first gonna show Rogue and Mad Lions on Friday, and then they're gonna show G2 Misfits on Saturday. So you still will have some sort of tension for Rogue Mad Lions, but yeah, you don't have 3 Worlds lock-ins on the first day already. Oh man, this format is so trash, unbelievable.
I love the tournament format. The format to get to Worlds is garbage. Please.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I'm fine with like a double limit is fine, but like finding your Worlds, I don't know. It takes
the only real excitement here is will Fnatic or Misfits make it in? That's
exactly. Or Excel.
Sure. Or Excel.
Or Excel. You don't know. You know.
Or Excel. I have no idea. Not Vitality, that's all I know.
Yeah, not Vitality.
Yeah. I mean...
Yeah. Is there any other particular team you want to talk about? Because I think we have G2, Rogue, Fnatic.
Yeah, how the hell did the Mad Lions get, like, everyone and their mums except Armor in, like, first place?
All right.
It was so nuts,
This is where I can pull up like the other graphic, because now we can maybe talk about the All Pro. So here I have the whole list, and this is the list Shakara has posted on Reddit. I have added the players who didn't get any points as well, just for the full picture of where the votes went. Now, I saw some people say like or like imply that this would be some definitive ranking of where the top laners rank. That's definitely not the case. Like if you just we could only vote on 3 people. And
Armor's on 4th.
Yeah. So that's a thing.
Yikes.
So people didn't really understand or seem to imply that by this list, for example, Larsen would be the 5th mid laner in the LEC, or Certus would be the 6th mid laner in the LEC. But that's not how it works. It's just that somebody apparently did include Certus in their votes as the probably like 2 people as their third vote, which means he got 1 point twice. This isn't in any way indicative of, for example, I don't know, like people thinking that Dajor shouldn't be in the league at all. It's just the mid lane pool was top heavy, so he wouldn't receive any like votes.
There's also an element here, should be pointed out, plenty of people who think they have a player who can like make it to first place or something will vote for someone they think will go last place, right? So
I don't think there was a lot of strategical voting, honestly, in the on the ballot. We've seen that in the past.
But people definitely thought Jezu was top 3 for sure.
I mean, Oh, yeah, that's fair, actually.
Like you'd vote Kazi before you vote him. Like it's not like there are definitely going to be strategic votes like
Well, but
that.
it wasn't as egregious, actually. And also, I will say, because the split was so incredibly close, the All Pros were likely to be upsetting to some people always. There was
Yeah.
always going to be discussion, especially probably in the bot lane. Although where's Patrick or upset? You know, people are very high on upset. Jonghoon is a name people. So I mean, I'm personally very big proponent of Xerxes. I don't mind, obviously, that Marcoon edges it out over him. I voted for Marcoon myself, but I would have liked seeing Xerxes in there. You know, like there was always going to be a big discussion this split because it was such a fiesta and it was very tough to nail down, okay, who was actually standing out across 8 weeks of competition when every week was basically what the fuck happened, you know, like throwing your hands in the air. I have no clue what happened. So it was always going to be upsetting. This is also the one where I saw like many people argue we shouldn't give broadcasters and media the votes because they're going to base it on narrative when I'm sorry, but if you just go back one split or just last year's summer, when I mean the all pro votes weren't were public then, but last split or if people remember in 2020, we saw players voting based on legacy because that's what players do and based on scrims. Like players and teams
Players do it based on scrims, legacy, and based on who their friends are and who they want to play with next.
Exactly.
Like,
so
players can be more biased than anyone because they fucking talk to each other every day, scrim each other every day, and have known each other for years. They are the only ones who can be.
And
biased.
of course, broadcast and media might be more susceptible to narrative because that's, you know, we watch the broadcast and maybe, you know, like I try to limit it as much as possible. And in the past splits, actually, I've been my votes have been very consistent, I guess, across the board. But I'm also biased in terms of who I speak to for interviews and what they tell me. You know, like if I talk to a player and he says like, you know, actually this my mid laner is such a big factor in the team performing well. You know, like subconsciously or even consciously, I'm gonna think, yeah, but this team is performing well, and they actually told me that the mid laner was such a big impact. You know, like those things are gonna happen. All what you can hope for is that in the end it all averages each other out. So you can maybe speak to proportions of which party should have how many votes or how heavy they should weigh. But to say that it's just like because somebody I think on Reddit. I didn't do the math myself, but they basically only took the players and coaches votes. And Armut would be second in All Pro. Like that's the best argument you can give against not making it because Armut, listen, I love the guy, and he did expand his champ pool to Gwen, you know, like, and he popped off on Gwen. He had carry performances on Gwen, who was OP, but let's be real, he's not a top 3 LEC top laner, right? And I hope in playoffs he's gonna pop off again because he has been stepping up his games. Like last year when he get to playoffs with Mad Lions, he did start performing much better. But you cannot say that this regular split he was a top 3 top laner, right? So like if you then take the votes of the all pro votes by the pro players and the coaching staff, and he's in second, all right, well there's your argument gone. I'm sorry. It's like the way this works is that it averages each other out. And yes, people are going to be more unhappy with this one than in previous splits. It makes sense to me. And nobody's votes are probably going to be perfect. And there are probably votes that shouldn't happen there. But yeah, this is the best system that there is for it.
Well,
I think.
Well, I definitely wouldn't say this is the best system we have for something like this, or the best possible system for something like this. First off, I think the fact that all the votes are public inherently makes it as biased as it is. I think if there were anonymous votes, the votes would look very, very different. I think players wouldn't be trying to get into teams with people that they know management builds teams around, right? I think that they wouldn't feel so bad about voting against a guy who's always being a really nice guy to them. Shit like this. I think the fact that the voting practices are public is a large part of the reason why this list is so poorly done. But you will not really be able to get the list done without that. So I think the list has to be poorly done because of it. I
mean,
think
votes being public makes a lot of sense to me, honestly.
but the votes being public fundamentally changes who they'll vote for. I think they're not honest because of it. So when it comes to, but that's true. Like, well, being anonymous, you're going to say what you actually think.
I mean, I'm just basing it on myself because my votes don't change based on public. But you're probably talking about players and maybe some other
players and a lot of. I mean, a lot. I would also say a lot of personalities change their votes because of that as well. Like, there are plenty of people who get on your stream all the time, so you're going to vote for them. There are plenty of people who give you info, so you're going to vote for them, right? You're at the very least not going to be in a position where you vote for someone they hate, right? All this kind of shit. Like, definitely, it would change a lot.
It is possible. I mean, I'm obviously it's a possibility and it's very realistic. And I mean, given based on what we've seen that players do vote based on legacy and scrim results and stuff like this, yes, people are susceptible to it.
Yeah, it would make it perfect, but I think it's one of the only issues you can really get rid of. I don't think there is going to be any such thing as like some sort of unbiased panel you could get, because who decides who goes on the unbiased panel? Do they have the game knowledge to do it? Who decides that they have the game knowledge to do it?
There's always going to everybody, whichever party you bring in, is going to have bias. It's always there.
But I think I think the way it's done right now, I mean, you'd have to make it anonymous if you wanted to be way more that's the biggest change you could do. I think when it comes to the lists themselves, normally I hate every single one of them. Here, the top 3 is arguable most of the time, which is vastly different to how it normally is, where I think 50% of the people on the list shouldn't even be on the list. Whereas this time, most of my complaints are just the order of it. So, I would still have 3 out of 4 of those Mad Lions players up there. I just wouldn't have them in first place, right? Except for maybe one of them. Yeah. But, Niski, Kaiser, or Yoya, I'd still have up there, right? Yeah. I just wouldn't. I would maybe have a Yoya first, but that would be it. Niski I wouldn't have first. I'd have Caps first. Kaiser wouldn't have first. I'd have Targamas first, right? But this is more order stuff rather than all of them shouldn't be up here.
Yep.
It definitely, the first team itself looks really fucking weird to me.
It's so strange. If you think about it, okay, but if they have 4 of the best players in their role, either Armwood is just completely griefing their games, or is the risk just so close? What happened? But not to an extent where you say okay, but they didn't finish first place. They didn't finish in first place. It's crazy.
Well, yeah, I mean, to not finish first place, you wouldn't have to int anywhere near as much as if it was 4 up here and you were 5th or something. I think at that point it's quite feasible. That arm's just enough for them not to get first.
No, but
but also the where I thought you were going to go with that, because the armor thing actually makes sense. Where I thought you were going to go with that was that if they have all of these, then was Rika just so bad that they couldn't even make playoffs, right? That's the real Morty mind blower, right? Because I could see the argument for Niski being first. Niski would be my MVP, straight up. But I could see the argument for him being first mid laner, because we don't actually give a good criteria on what best mid laner means to you. Doesn't mean the mid laner with the most impact. Doesn't mean the guy that plays mid lane the best. Doesn't mean the guy who plays mid lane the most consistent. You can pick whatever. But I could see
it says on the ballot, if I remember correctly, it says vote on who you think was the best in their role. But but mid laners, but every player in their team can fulfill a different role. There's different, So that is obviously, in terms of voting, they cannot make it more specific because people value different things, and that's fine. But and at the same time, you would otherwise be eliminating a lot of people who are doing a great job for the team, but not in a similar way that somebody else is. So it makes sense. Yeah. It's just you're measuring different things.
But it's if you think Niski is really good for the reason that he had a significant impact on the team, do you think Kaiser was also this good last year and Rika was just that bad? Right?
Last split, yeah.
Aoyoi was this good last split and Rika was just that bad, and Unforgiven was this good last split and Rika was just that bad? Or do you think Kaiser suddenly got a skill boost? This aspect of it doesn't make much sense to me, right? I don't think Rika was that bad. It going into the Armor place is weird for me. I've seen that a lot on social media, but I think that's just because Armor's a really sociable guy, so loads of people like Armor on social media.
Yeah.
But Armor, obviously, if you have 4 players that are insane, right, that are top place here, and second place has 3 players that are really insane, right? Because they all have top billings here, right? Yeah, your top laner can be just enough for you not to make first or tie first. Yeah, like that seems really obvious to me. So it's quite weird to me that the armor argument even exists.
But you would like, I don't know, like for it to be, for 4 players to be this strong, like you would expect more dominance throughout their entire split, and that's not what we've seen from Mad Lions.
I mean, but to clarify, Broken Blade, Jankos, Caps, Targamas are all in the top 2 as well.
Yeah.
Like it's like like I could
But
easily
not
from
first.
this lineup it looks like
But
they're
not-
yeah,
but-
but yes, but from this lineup it could very easily be that they're even. But Broken Blade is just the only one that is like so
The difference maker
ahead.
comparatively.
Yeah. That's why he's first and Armor's fourth, and that can easily be enough here. Like that actually makes sense. I don't understand why people are making a deal as if it doesn't make sense here. Like, yeah, on that kind of logic makes sense. What doesn't make sense to me is again the comparison to last split.
Mm-hmm.
I see Broken Blade, Jankos, Caps, Targamas here. They all have 4 here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but one of them doesn't have a player at all. Yeah, then it makes sense. Like it's I think that aspect is really over. Look, Unforgiven I wouldn't put on the top 3 for bot. I'd have Neon, Patrick, and
Comp.
Neon, Patrick, and Comp. Yeah. So Comp was the most consistent the whole time. Maybe is a good argument for that. Patrick, though, if you like took the first half of the split, right, and just cut it there, Patrick was just the best, right? And I'm really glad that Patrick and Neon kind of like split votes here. It's 40 and 44, and Neon only got him with like 4 extra votes because I think that should have been a hard decision for people. So I'm glad that it was.
But I think, I mean, my top was very difficult for me because it was very underwhelming overall in terms of, like, many of the roles. I was like, okay, I guess I want this player in, but who else and how do I rank them? You know, like it was just so difficult to nail down. Like we've had splits where it was relatively easy. You know, it was like, okay, this guy's clearly the best. Then it's this guy. Then it's this guy. And sometimes we just had like a top one. I remember the days when we had the Alfari, Wunder, Bwipo triangle in top lane. It was like, okay, the rest is just much worse than those 3. So that was easy to call, but display was really, really tough.
Yeah, I mean, does that make it tough or easy? I don't know. Because, like, for me, it's like there are only 3 people you could really say. You could maybe say Irrelevant because he had a really nice split, but I think that's more like a Rookie of the Split thing because it was localized on tanks, so you could see he was really good at split pushes, just his team wasn't really good at playing with it.
Yeah.
But Odo Alpha, Broken Blade, like, I think are a clear top 3 here. So that aspect, like, I fully agreed with it on. I think Aoyoi, Jankos, Markoon, I'd maybe trade Markoon for Xerxes, but I could also see the argument for having Markoon there, right? So I somewhat agree with those 3. Niski, Caps, VTO, I'd remove VTO for Larson, and then I think it's perfect, right? Unforgiven, Comp, Neon again, I'd remove Unforgiven for Patrick, right? And Kaiser, Targamas, Trimby.
It's just the order.
And more. I think I mean it's hard, but I'd probably move Trimby down for Mickey X, even though Mickey X had a decently bad last week. Well, at least 2 games in the last week he was bad on.
I mean, he overall, I think he had a pretty rough split, to be honest. The last weeks he was not performing very well.
Yeah, I didn't think he was performing like significantly worse than anyone else there. I definitely saw like a lot of issues with Trimby. So I'm more likely to just put Mickey X up there, which might be my big difference between me and others. Yeah. Jeonghoon being up there is so weird to me because he played like Pike Bard.
I did that.
And even then, he didn't play them well enough to win, and he had bad Pike games.
He literally so in the final week, I think he played Bard again, and his early game was good, and then he completely threw it. Like yeah.
It's that one's weird to me. Hillisang, I mean, people still want to play with this guy. I guess I don't know why he's getting those votes. I don't know where those votes came from. So
I don't know
like
either.
It's like there are basically 3 people that I would definitely replace here, which is like that's so different from what I'm used to here, where it's like you guys are all high, half these guys shouldn't be here. It's just the rankings themselves, more or less, and it's pretty wild to me. That it's actually being able to be this accurate, but I also think This is like the negative way to put it, that it's because the overall gameplay is being lowered.
Yeah.
So it's like, because of that, when people are bad, they are very obviously bad, and that just sticks in your mind a lot more. And so it's the people who don't stick in your mind as much that you end up putting up here. But yeah, this is the most accurate it's ever been. The first team looks troll, yes, I agree. But overall, as a top three, this is by far the most accurate it's ever been. I did not get eye cancer looking at it. Thank the Lord. Right? That's a massive upgrade to normal.
Yep.
Until I saw who got coaching stuff at the split, but whatever.
I didn't get that either. So just to say, so for rookie of the split, we'll go over these as well, because my other
Who got that?
That's not announced yet, but we could choose from 4 players. Woohoo! We could choose from Erdote, Agressivo, Jonghoon, and Irrelevant. So they still have to announce it. It's probably going to be between Irrelevant and Jonghoon, even though I think Irrelevant should absolutely get it.
Yeah, he should.
And people are sleeping on that guy way too much. Jonghoon had the flashy plays, so he probably, like, be relatively close in terms of votes. Agressivo and Erdote, both on BDS. Erdote isn't even in the LEC anymore because the BDS Academy player wanted some time off or whatever, so Erdote had to go to the Academy team and Limit had to sub in, so he didn't even get to play a full split. So the top 3 is probably going to be Irrelevant, Jonghoon, and Agressivo, in with Agressivo probably being 3rd then. I think Irrelevant should win it. I put him first. Coaching stuff the split, I put Misfits first, then Mad Lions, and then G2, I guess, because they finished first again, so they probably did something well.
I can see arguments for G2.
Yeah, it was like, okay, so Misfits and Mad make sense to me, and then it's okay, I guess.
G2. Why does Mad make sense to you? I have to ask that.
Why Mad makes sense to me?
Yeah.
Oh, well, because I think they did a very good job of getting this team very quickly up to speed. I think in the first week you could still see that obviously they were trying out with Niski how they're going to play, but they pretty quickly found their identity, I think, with the team. They maintained that. They did a very good job of finding this team. Well, we had a mid-split patch change, I think. And Mad Lions got quickly back on track with that. Now, I think this award altogether should be kicked because we have no fucking clue really how the coaching stuff interacts. Like, what we only see is, like, we see 10 games each weekend, and we basically see 90% of what the coaches do we don't see because they have scrims. They even when they're not playing, they're doing stuff to keep the team together and stuff like this. So, like, this award, many people have said it.
Like, for me, it's like coaching staff ends up being the award where anything we can't explain through a player, we just decide the coaching staff did.
Exactly, right? Yeah.
And yeah, that's just a really bad way to do things. So like, I always think if anybody ever gets the award, they should in their acceptance speech just say this award is completely meaningless. Please.
They don't do acceptance speeches, I think. Pretty
like. They did. They used to get you into the studio and you did your own, like,
I don't think they're doing it for this one anymore. Just for the rookie and MVP, they're doing.
They know the plan. They know the plan.
I understand it,
But like as you were saying that, I was thinking, well, I attribute that to Niski because I saw Niski do it on Fnatic. Different coaching stuff. So like and this is always what Niski was going to do. Like, he models himself off Doinby. His comms make that very obvious. So is that the coaching staff or is that Niski? And in that regard, because it's something that, like, this is the big thing.
Is the coaching staff the coaching staff of the split because they brought in Niski? That's like great job.
No, I wasn't going to ask that at all because I think that's very obviously no.
Yeah.
They because if they're bringing in Niski for that, then they're basically admitting that they are not good at working with rookies, which they've then built their whole thing on, because they're saying we could not get Rika to be that kind of person, even though we thought and explicitly said he could be that kind of person. Yeah. So we're bringing in Niski because we're admitting we can't do our fucking job. What I was going to say is that at the point where you start giving the unexplains over to the coaching staff, right? Then you are suddenly taking credit from where credit is due, which is the real evil behind the coaching staff, like, award for me, is that it starts to just take credit away from the players. And I think if we just don't know, we should just say we don't know and just, like, move on with it and not, risk Because Niski might have put so much hard work into the team here, and you may have, with those sentences, removed that from him. And hell, Kaiser maybe stepped up, read some coaching books, and did this. El Yoya maybe.
But that's the thing, right? Because we don't know, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly. But we may be accidentally one of us are doing that.
So I mean, I'll fully admit what you're doing when you're voting for this award is just literally okay. I guess you're trying to retcon anything that you couldn't really figure out or something.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, must have been the coaching stuff. I mean, but yeah, I think it's also for me, like, because you know how the coaching stuff works. Mad Lions have been pretty open about it. Like, I guess I'll give it to them, but I hope teams don't adhere too much, like, value to whatever this award is supposed to mean. Anyway, man. We're already almost at 2 hours, and we've spoken about half the teams only.
Good.
Yeah. Good. Why is it good?
Yeah, because that means it's a good show.
Okay. Oh yeah. I mean, I'm not sure what people expect, because usually we last around 2 hours for the show. So if people are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna...
So then when people see a time code that goes to 4 hours, they're gonna be like, oh fuck yes.
Yeah, I'm not gonna make it 4 hours, but.
We're gonna half-ass the other half of the league.
I mean, they half-assed the LEC, so why not, right?
See ya. My days.
What do you want to say about BDS? SK?
Jesus, actually, you could say a lot about BDS. Like, is it actually... I mean, I think the biggest issue BDS made was keeping Nuclear in. Like, I don't understand why they were so stingent on that particular decision to do, right? I think there were plenty of mids they could have brought up. Why this guy had to remain, I'm not sure.
I guess I saw like he had played. Didn't he play? Yeah, he played one split at Schalke because Abedaga left mid-season last year. And they were like, yeah, I mean, if we kick him now, maybe there was some sentiment, you know, like, let's see how he does in the next split, because he only had one split. That's a possibility. So yeah, I'm not sure, but obviously BDS entered the year with the whole concept of, okay, we're gonna be the development team. We're gonna bring in a bunch of rookies, and we're gonna or unexperienced players. Like Adam only had one split, obviously. He's not a rookie anymore, but still a rookie. I
definitely think, yeah, actually, like, the biggest thing BDS put into question, I guess, is because from the outside perspective, you'd actually think it was good what they did, because they actually got GrabbZ and Co first, right?
Yep.
And then they got the players.
Yep.
So, does this make it, like, is this an argument against going in that order? Or is it more like a good coach isn't necessarily a good scout? Right? Or did maybe GrabbZ and Co not get that much freedom, right? Did they grab them but not give them free reign? So it was more like we're signaling we're taking...
No, I think from speaking to GrabbZ, he had quite a lot of say, but the mindset was definitely... BDS's mindset was, we're gonna build a roster, we're not gonna grab talent, invest a lot of money into talent that we can throw together and then be successful. They wanted to be like a development thing, and then GrabbZ was given the task, okay, who do you want? You know, like, who do you want to talk with? BDS had eyes on Adam, and GrabbZ, I did an interview with him about this. He said, like, he had his doubts about Adam, but in terms of his personality, right? But he said, okay, but after talking with him, you know, it was also like, Adam is just, he's a very young guy, he's like 19 or something. It just made some mistakes.
Later.
Yeah. I mean, but that's also, like, I really like GrabbZ because he's always very honest and candid just about what he thinks and what's going on in the team and why he makes decisions and stuff like this. I really appreciated a lot from him. And he said right after the spring split, he said, yeah, I mean, my guys, as soon as they couldn't make playoffs anymore, they just threw in the towel and they weren't playing for the job anymore. He got really angry with them, and I really respect that he's so open about this because, yeah, work for your job, kid. Like, you're making thousands of euros each month, like crazy amounts of money. And you're just gonna throw in the towel and not even try to do anything good anymore. But that's why they did the boot camp, which, you know, at which they tried to see, okay, which of our main team and academy team actually has the drive to work, and based on that, they made the changes heading into summer. But BDS overall, obviously, this project hasn't succeeded in any way whatsoever. They had their best week in the final week of the whole year when they couldn't make Worlds anymore, presumably because they felt no pressure anymore or something like this. They were like, okay, nothing to lose anymore. We can play a bit looser, and they played their best week in week 8, even though they only won one game. It was against Rogue, which is a nice win. They actually played well against Misfits and Mad Lions as well, compared to how they played in the rest of the year. So I have no idea what to do with this BDS, because if you're now gonna cave and do sign like big talent in order to be successful, then what does that tell you about like your understanding of the league heading in, right? Because then you probably thought heading into the league, oh, we can do this, but you just had a gross misunderstanding of how the LEC works and how talent works together. If you're gonna stick with this, you're probably gonna have to replace quite a few players, and this whole project of building a team from the ground up is also gonna fall through, because you need to admit that you horribly failed at scouting in some regard.
We used to send rookie lineups to Worlds every year, and this ended because we started trying to build rookie lineups, then have rookie teams come in.
Yeah.
Who've already developed together, who already have a feel for each other, who've already proven that they can work together. This lineup had 3 elements of the old K-Corp lineup with Adam, Shinkrov, and Xmati, but they did not have Targamas, and they did not seem to identify what Targamas did for that lineup that was such a big deal. They seem to have fallen for the Adam memes, so to speak, that came from their time in the LFL. Like, people got terrible readings on that lineup and how it actually worked out. It was more like a mini Fnatic than it was a mini Vitality or whatever they thought it was. I'm talking about the El Cabo one.
Yeah.
Like it's the. I think for me, like I've started to finally see people question, why is franchising even there at all? Right? Like, does this actually make teams more competitive? Especially as they see European teams just get worse and worse and worse, and they do get worse and worse and worse.
Yep.
The teams that used to come in and be that third or second team that were keeping the league in shape were these full rookie lineups, like the Misfits lineup when it came in,
Mad Lions.
Mad Lions, or the Giants lineup, which became the Vitality lineup, right? When you say Mad Lions,
2021.
Oh yeah, so there's. No, that wasn't. They didn't qualify for that though. Splice was. Splice did fully qualify though, and they ended up becoming Mad Lions.
Oh, no, but I was talking about like bringing in rookies, because the Mad Lions, they had Orome, they had Shadow, Karzi, and Kaiser as rookies in that year where they were the first team to beat G2.
But that is an argument. That is an argument for building a rookie lineup. I'm saying that rarely works because the people building it rarely are able to actually get the synergies on point.
Right. Yeah. No, I see what you mean, but
I'm saying that what happens, and the reason we were able to make rookie lineups work, is because we were promoting them when they were already proven. So these guys had spent ages in Challenger Series and in ERLs, and they had proven that they could function together as a team, that they could develop together, that they had a personality to it, and that they had a fit.
I mean, if you look at
Kaiser, Karzi, team, and they got in.
Kaiser, Karzi, Oyoya were all super hot in the ERL, so yeah.
They were super hot in the ERLs, but that's not my point. The team was hot. So the Vitality lineup was literally 4 members of the Giants Gaming lineup that came through Challenger Series, right? The Jizuke, Attila, Mini Trupax as he was called. They had Jack Troll and Jew as their supports. They alternated them at the time. Plus Jungle. The only guy that they replaced was the top laner. That was it. The Mystics lineup came in pretty much untouched, right? They kept the core components of Fire Hands, blah blah blah. The Splice lineup came in fully as 5, right? That was they replaced Nisbeth with Mickey X in the second split, and that was it, right?
Yeah.
But otherwise, Wonder, Senketsu, they had all played in Challenger Series and they qualified through it. H2K came in, they only changed Feather and Furiyu. Everything else was the same, right? All these lineups came in and in one season went to Worlds. They were a top 3 team, they were full rookie lineups. But that's because they also had the additional season playing, where they were coming through challenger series, etc. So the team itself was proven. It's not the individual rookies thing.
Right.
The team itself was proven.
I see what you're saying.
would
Yeah.
never have made it in if you were trying to just pick good individuals. But Jizuke worked for that team, and you will never find this out if you maintain this kind of no relegation promotion thing, right? And the Mad Lions line doesn't prove that. The Mad Lions is an exception to the current rule, which is that teams are very bad at understanding synergies.
Yes.
But the system we had before was very
good.
Yeah. Not just good at giving us the synergies, but giving us such good synergies that they went towards the next year and kept us competitive on the international stage. And I'm finally seeing people question, do we need franchising at all to be competitive? You never needed to be competitive. It's given them the excuse to take that aspect away from us. Because before, these were the teams that lost them their spots. And now they don't have that risk anymore. And now when you do see a team go for rookies, and now the rookies themselves as individuals suffer for that. Because when teams go for these rookie lineups, they don't go to them to build a synergistic team. They go there to save money. It is incidental if they're able to make a synergistic team out of that. And that is the big issue now. And I hate that because people will get this idea that the rookie talent isn't there and you're choosing between rookie talent and veteran players, which is like where we began here in this conversation. And I hate that dichotomy because it doesn't exist. It's a dichotomy that's being forced upon the scene. It's being forced upon the scene to make money, and that's it.
Like it's like the good teams, like they are a blend, right? Like of experience and personality. And
only now,
Yeah,
only now. It used to be that way.
No, but I mean, like if you're looking at like how these teams should go about it, then you're looking You can't. I mean, I guess Rogue is another example of a team that promoted their ERL team. And
they promoted the whole ERL team. Exactly, right? They promoted the whole thing.
The whole thing,
The whole thing.
The whole thing.
That's exactly it, right? They did the whole thing, and that's when it worked.
Yep. So, I mean, the thing is, and to tie it back to BDS, I guess it was ambitious in a way, and it was interesting to see how it would play out. But their first target for the first split was making playoffs, right? It wasn't even doing super well, and they've said it's going to be a development project. So I've no clue. Similar to in a way to Vitality, where what do you do with this team? What do you do? Who do you keep? Who do you? I think. For example, I think a player like Aggressivo was actually quite fine. Because he had one split, right? On the team, and in terms of like overall play, I would say like he probably developed the most. But it's so difficult to see because the team as a whole was just so bad. Yeah, I don't know. It's a very tough one. BDS. They obviously have access to a lot of money because they are owned by this Belgian billionaire or whatever. And I what I want is that the LEC is as competitive as it can be, with just the best teams possible competing there, right? That's not gonna happen with BDS if they keep on this track, because it's provably failed. Where we haven't seen any development of the team overall across the year. Where in the spring split we saw them being pretty decent in the early game, and then completely int mid and late, obviously, but they had something they could hang on to. This split, their early game was bad again, so I'm not sure where you even start with the team like this.
I mean, you start with who can you actually sell and make profit from, and if you can sell those, and whoever you have left, you're building a team around that. That's basically what has to happen for pretty much any of these teams.
Well, the way they're probably gonna go around it about it is saying which players do we want to keep, and then try to sell the ones that they don't want to keep.
Can they afford to do that? You mean, can any team really afford to do that? Like, you want to build up a war chest at this point, especially now that we live in a post-phase going public world. And definitely you could make a more concerted effort to sell, say, nuclear int or something like this, but I think ultimately it will have to go that way, because you do that and then be like, all right, GrabbZ, you have this left, do what you can with it, right?
Well, the thing is, I'm not even sure if they're going to keep GrabbZ, right? Because he might be scapegoated for the results. Even though, like, I rate
He's
GrabbZ
also probably the most valuable person they have in terms of selling.
absolutely, absolutely, undeniably.
It's true.
Could see
It's true.
Fnatic GrabbZ or something, you know, like could be a thing. But like,
That could be a shout, actually. Yeah.
reunited with Perkz if Vitality is gonna sell Perkz. Ooh. Anyway, I think, yeah. I mean, I would like to see BDS keep GrabbZ because in the sense that they don't blame him for what's happened, because there is a chance that he's just very bad at working with rookies, right? There is a chance, but in terms of what I see these players do in game, like I cannot imagine that GrabbZ hasn't spoken to them about, guys, please, we don't, if we're doing Nashor, we don't turn around and die all for chasing, like, what was it, a Nautilus or something like this. What they did in the game they so memorably threw. Well, the throw was memorable. I don't remember who they were playing, but
So what you're saying is BDS should buy Perkz.
You know, if you have the money. If you have the money.
I mean, I would love it if it turned out that this GrabbZ Perkz duo synergy was the actual engine that kept G2 going.
Hell
right?
yeah.
It wasn't that they lost Perkz last year. It was that they lost the Perkz GrabbZ synergy, right? And that's what they had to get back.
That is a narrative. Oh my god.
Yes.
I love that one as well. It's like,
that would be very unique. I'm actually like sat here thinking genuinely that may actually be a shout, by the way.
yeah, it might actually be the case, right?
Earlier.
Because they keep each other, they balance each other out very well. They keep each other in check, and they understand why they work so well together, what they need from each other in a team environment. Maybe actually, man.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on to something.
If you want the big money BDS play, fuck it, why not? Just grab Perkz in and then see what Perkz wants to do, but keep GrabbZ while you're doing it and see if that whole thing works, right?
Yeah.
Keep see if that is the synergy, if you've got the formula, right? That's why Vitality didn't just turn themselves into G2 by grabbing Perkz. They didn't grab Perkz GrabbZ, you know? Maybe that's the Vitality play. Maybe BDS just sell GrabbZ to Vitality for massive dollar. Right, and suddenly Vitality works. You know, maybe this is it.
Maybe
if you want to spequate on lineup, I'll do it that kind of a way.
Oh, we can do when playoffs come around. We can do like a playoff special.
Yeah.
I like that would be fire actually. But yeah. So BDS, tough project. I think SK. If I look at SK, they're split. I mean, SK. If in case you have for some reason not understood it yet, SK is a budget team. They always have been. They have had a lot of luck in finding Selfmade. That 1 year, like, he was on there and he became like rookie of the split, and obviously he grew out to be a very good player. But other than that, SK is very budget. They're always going to operate on budgets. It's basically what Astralis did in terms of just hiring some old veterans who knows how they're going to perform. SK does that also with just unknown talent. They're not in any way a priority pick for rookies to go to the LEC because SK hasn't amounted to anything. And this split, I mean, they did something towards the end, I guess. They ended also with 7 wins. Higher than I expected, but yeah, I think Certus and Genox are the standout players there. Probably keep them as well as you can and try to do something with that. But in terms of the split overall,
they actually have a pretty good academy team.
SK Prime, they do well in the Prime League.
They got 3rd in playoffs, they got 2nd in regular split, but like their jungler's actually really good. So that is something they could look into moving up, because that is, I mean, what you see as 0 votes, so you know, it must be bad. But Gilius could be Gilius replacing Gilius with Ekas could definitely be a shout from them. When Gadget played for them, he actually wasn't that bad, but Gadget's always had the issue of being like a very mage-based player.
Well, he also had to play alongside Lee Sin, and he made the memorable Lee Sin tweet, right? So it's
yes, that was the memorable shit. Yes, but like but Gadget's actual like pool as a result is actually very strong, given that you would want to be playing through Genax in that kind of hypothetical, right? So Carver's spot with that is something that almost has to be a ban, right? Playing center lanes on bot side with Gadget's pool is very, very viable. Like, maybe you have to ban all these cross maps if you want to play against them, if you've moved Gadget up. Like, they actually have pretty good options here internally that they could do. So they could look to offload these players and make some money and move these guys up. Like, I think that's a very viable thing for them. For them, I see much easier routes than I do for other teams to get good. Because with BDS, you have to basically scorch earth and start from scratch.
Yeah. I mean, but with SK, I can see a core you keep with Genex and Nuclear.
Yeah.
Over as Genex and Certus.
Yeah, never Nuclear.
No.
But for sure, like, because
I mean, Nuclear was the bot laner,
team.
right? Who played for Schalke for a bit, wasn't it? I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was the Korean AD carry, and they brought him on with a Korean support player who plays Zyra a fuck ton.
Yeah.
What was his name? Che.
Right. So anyway.
Che was his name.
Yeah, SK, the split, I guess, towards the end got a bit more impressive because they started picking up wins, which was good to see for them, and also for the competitiveness of the league. I wonder if it was just an indication of the other teams even becoming worse and SK just doing the same thing and getting. But I do think Certus towards the later weeks started playing much better, so that's good to see. Other than that, I don't have many thoughts on SK, to be honest. They're probably not going to do anything with in terms of big roster moves, aside from trying to fill the holes with other relatively cheap players, because that's just SK's budget and how it works. Yeah. I don't know. I really don't have anything else to say about SK. So, who do we have left then? Misfits and Excel and Astralis.
I mean, Misfits have had a really good split.
Yep.
Most of it is that I'm worried they're going to get experimental at playoffs again, because they had that Gwen game against Fnatic, and it's like, no, just stick to your one trick, please. Like G2 did, stick to your one trick, right? I respect G2 for sticking to it. Stick to it yourselves, right? And you can actually, you can make worlds here, right?
You're in a very good position to make worlds, yeah.
Yeah. So I hope they stick to that. Zanzibar for Schlatten was a curious one. I can only assume there was behind the scenes shit going on for that.
I mean, they said what they said about it is we need somebody who has a positive influence on the team, right? Who can rile up the team, and they did, because they did this after week 5, I believe, right? Yeah, when they went 0-2, after just having a 5-game win streak, they went 0-2 in week 5, and then they subbed out Schlatten for Zanzara. So I'm not sure if maybe heading into that week or something there were some problems, and they said we'll play out this week, and then it didn't work out, and whatever. It happened.
I mean,
in terms of quality, in terms of quality of play, nothing much changed. Like,
yeah, exactly. But like, I'm really happy for Neon. He's
Hell
finally
yes.
getting the recognition he deserves.
Hell yes.
And he's following Hanzama's trajectory from last year, where it's like they finally started recognizing him towards the end of summer. If he actually makes it to Worlds, I hope we get similar interviews with Koreans where they start saying, okay, this Neon guy is actually insane. Because that's what happened with Hansama, and then everyone was like, oh, I guess Hansama's good.
Well, as we discussed it before, and as I said, I already saw it, but it's fine. Yeah, I guess the broader narrative. But I think for Misfits, obviously they had this spring split that never should have been as good as it. They themselves were surprised that their spring split was as good as it was, because they were just catching throws from opponents left and right, and they did that very well. But now, as we've discussed in the previous episode, they definitely started finding who they are rather than how can we punish what opponents are doing wrong or something, which was mostly based on individual recognition of seizing opportunities, right? But I think that I'm very excited about Neon doing so well and getting the respect he deserves. I think I put him first in my All-Pro vote, actually, over the course of the split. But then we have Veteo, who did have his highlight moments again, especially towards the later weeks. I don't understand why people put him as high in their votes for mid laner of the split in the All-Pro votes, because the first 4 weeks he was just not good. He was constantly overstepping and getting caught out, but whatever. And I think with Mursa, I hope that he gets another. Oh, obviously, he's not gonna get another split on Misfits because they're kind of gone. But I hope he gets more time in the LEC because his development has been steady and irrelevant comparatively has been crazy because he very quickly grew into what exactly what Misfits needed. So overall, the trajectory of this team has been very good. I really hope they go to Worlds because I would love to see Neon just get the experience there. I would love to see Veteo get the experience there because we saw his improvement from last year to this year when he did the Korean bootcamp. Well, let's put him on a big stage. Let's see what he can pick up there, right? He obviously has a lot of potential as a player. So I would love to see this lineup go to Worlds. And in terms, I mean, we discussed Misfits week in, week out. I think in the first week we definitely saw how terrible they were, but then just picking up on how they wanted to play the game. Now they did lose their final 2 games against G2 and Fnatic, but then in the tiebreaker match against Fnatic, which was immediately after, you saw immediately how they adapted, right? And they could execute it. So there's so many good things to say about this Misfits lineup and the coaching staff as well. Obviously. We have no clue what they did. Maybe it was Zanzara giving all the speeches to to get them to these wins. But if we look at
they were winning before he came on.
Of course. Yeah, I'm just joking, right? But it's big props to them. That's all I can say. We've discussed them endlessly on previous episodes.
Yeah. I feel like them and Excel we talked about the most.
Yeah,
so
I mean we can talk about Excel, I guess. Had a few very rough weeks, obviously. Week 6, 7, 0-4. Then started with a loss against Rogue as well. But then won against SK and Astralis. Made it in by the skin of their teeth because Vitality crumbled. So, yeah.
I mean, they actually developed around their initial limitations. But they've done like almost a full season's worth of development within one split, which is quite impressive to me. Them losing out those few games to like, I wouldn't say to foes, but like they showed that clearly in mid game, if they're not fully far ahead, there's a lot of synergistic issues that are just there. But I think a lot of those are things you have to expect from a team that undergoes changes basically every single split. I am a bit worried about how Finn's playing. It wasn't a very good final few weeks for him. And Mickey X as well, the final week wasn't very good for him. But with Finn especially, this could maybe be an issue for them in playoffs.
I expect Mickey to be a player who can struck that 0-4 play because he's so experienced, right? So
but Patrick had a phenomenal split, so happy for him there.
Yep, very good split. Once again, because he's been very consistent bot laner the past years, but yeah.
I think Patrick could end up being the thing that could win them against Fnatic, but ultimately I think Finn v Wonder is going to be fairly one-sided. And if Razork just turns it on like he did last spring playoffs as well, then I think this is still going to be a Fnatic-favoured thing. But I think Excel should definitely be proud of the development that they've had over the course of the split, because they were a bit of a one-trick team first few weeks, and then they got figured out, and then they've managed to figure out different ways to get those tempo advantages.
What I will say, though, is that this Excel lineup, they dropped out VN for this. It was with the goal of being top 3 and going to Worlds, right? Which is very likely not going to happen.
I mean, everyone says that, so I always head over pinch of salt.
No, but the thing is, Misfits didn't have the goal of being top 3 last split, and I think their goal was playoffs, and they got 4th, and in regular split they got even higher. But
I mean, this is but it's kind of an exception. Like that's because they were playing to sell. But this team realistically had to stop being the guys that almost make playoffs, right? These guys are now a playoffs team. That is a significant
almost, but they barely made it. And this
people do not remember that Fnatic barely made it after they barely made it. Like it's fine. They are a playoffs team now, through and through. Multiple splits now. They've proven they can do it. It's not a curse for them anymore. If anything, they step up in those clutch moments. Like they did step up in the clutch moments. I have to credit where credit's due in that regard, I guess. Because against SK, not a very tough opponent, and Astralis also not a very tough opponent, but
that doesn't matter because you could see that as a team in a vacuum already, they were functioning very well together in those games. It doesn't matter who the opponent was. They were very competitive and looked very coherent. I will admit to that, but I will say that like this team should. I would still say if you're going to be a playoffs team and want to be like confident about going to playoffs, you shouldn't. If Fnatic or like if Vitality had won a game, they wouldn't have been in there, right? So it was out of their hands. And if you want to be a playoffs team, it should be in your hands that you make it to playoffs. And that is where this lineup failed in my regard, from my perspective, and that is underwhelming to me. Now I will say that their basis is fine now for where they are, but I would still say that I think Excel had a disappointing summer split overall because of what this lineup should do, or I guess, or shouldn't make playoffs in this fashion. They've made it now, and who knows what can happen. They had a very competitive series, obviously, against Vitality in the spring split in the lower bracket. They lost there, finished in 6th place. And if I'm very curious to see how that Fnatic match is going to go, because I think both teams will be very disappointed with finishing 6th. So yeah, good. That's a fun thing. Like both these teams, like will say, like, yeah, but how can we finish behind Misfits? Or like, oh, you did it yourself, you know, like. Yeah,
It's just that good.
Misfits
to be honest,
just that good. Yeah,
it's really sad. Misfits I finally got to be quite a well-managed team for the last year, and now they're gone. You know, they finally decided to be a good org, and they're finally gone the moment that happens. That's
rough.
Well, 20% of them will always be with us. You know, they'll always be with us.
Just like next split would just call them just Misfits heretics or something. You know.
It's just. I mean, the Heretics brand is a good brand to get in.
Oh yeah,
people really underrate it, I think.
It's very big because it's not as international, I guess, or like internationally oriented, or probably I'm not sure if their fans are also as crazy as.
It's not as Twitter oriented.
Yeah, it's not exactly. Yeah. I think I saw somebody compare them to the phase of.
They actually literally based themselves off of phase.
Yeah.
And they've pretty much.
I mean, phase is I don't like that org, but you know, in terms of getting clout and interactions, they know what to do. And we end fittingly with Astralis.
I mean, Xerxes, they have a most improved award in NA. Why don't we have one? Because like Xerxes just insta gets it. Like
absolutely.
I don't know.
Undeniable. He was my second vote for the All Pro.
Yeah. I'm tempted to replace Markoon with him and put him third. He was very good this split. Did not expect it, but obviously I didn't watch him in NA the whole time, so I don't know his journey in NA. But he's clearly.
I mean, it was difficult, but the whole team was difficult there. So
he's just such a different player from the player that he was in his last hit.
Super good. He's literally the reason that Astralis got as close to playoffs as they did.
Yes. He
outjungled almost all the junglers, so it's like he outjungled. His early game was so good that his team was in a position where they, even if they didn't win like mid game, like if the opponent threw, they were in a position where they could capitalize and come back into the game, and that's what Xerxes did. He glued that team together in a split where you had Physic Chachi, who's just a very tough top to play in the top lane for him. Apparently he's the shot caller, but very tough time for him as a pure top laner. Dejor had his moments, to be fair, but wasn't.
I mean, I was gonna say, I don't want to take things from Dejor because, Dejor's done phenomenally well, and he's kind of sleeper here. I'm actually really excited to see what he does next season. He's made so many good collapse decisions that I just don't normally see from.
But if we put him next to somebody like a Larson or a Caps, he would still like a Xerxes together with a Larson or a Caps, this team would be insanely well. And I think Xerxes still, compared to him, was by far the best player on Astralis. Dejor was also very good. But if you look at the bot lane, I don't think Astralis bot lane is anything special in any way. In terms of what they... Yeah, so I think Xerxes deserves so much praise for what Astralis did, and I'm very glad to see that at least people recognize what he did. It was in week 7 and 8 that people finally started talking about Xerxes doing well, but they got there. It's fine. I'm sad that he doesn't make playoffs, but then again, if they did, they probably wouldn't have done much anyway, so that might have only hurt his reputation.
Alright, cool. You want to go over any of the others or anything else? Or
We did do all the others.
Cool.
So that is, I guess, the retrospective episode, including franchise talk, including all pro awards. We did everything except for tier list, because that is going to be coming to you on Thursday, just before the playoffs start. We're going to do tier list episode of the players that have made it to the playoffs, rank them according to their roles, very similar to how we started the split, but we throw out all the teams that haven't made it to the playoffs. It's pretty self-explanatory, I think. But I do it anyway, because you never know how people interpret things on the internet. Veteran, any final thoughts from you on the regular split of the LEC? Anything you want to share?
I really hope that the other region splits looks bad. There you go.
Yeah, well, LCS is also not looking very good. I'm very, very confident in LPL doing super well again, but they always do. So, that's the story. But thank you very much for watching this episode of Best in the West. I hope you like it. It was we didn't really coordinate well, to be very honest, Veteran and I, what we're going to do with this episode, so we kind of figured it out shortly before. We made it work. Hope you liked it. If not, you'll have another.
It's more than that. They could think this is the intention the whole time.
No, but I mean, if they've watched it until this point, they've already watched it all anyway. So who cares, Like, I don't care. Like, you watch it. I mean, I still think it was a very good episode, to be honest. It was we had a good talk about all the teams. Also, pretty worth it, I guess, to like get the structure again in place of how these teams perform, because people are going to be very biased towards the final weeks and based
for sure.
And for the tier list, for example, we're probably going to base our tier list much more on the final weeks than about the whole split. So it's good to get that perspective. Thank you very much for watching. I don't know if I want to say anything else. No, so this is going to be the end. Bye.